The Silver Skulls stand as one of the Imperium's most enigmatic Space Marine chapters, their origins shrouded in the kind of bureaucratic fog that characterizes so many Imperial records from the earliest days following the Horus Heresy. While the chapter itself claims descent from the Ultramarines Legion and asserts second founding status, the fragmentary nature of records from that tumultuous period makes definitive verification impossible. The administrative chaos that followed the breaking of the legions into chapters saw countless documents lost, destroyed, or simply misfiled in the vast archives of Terra. Some Imperial historians point to certain genetic markers and organizational practices that strongly suggest Ultramarines' gene seed, while others note discrepancies in the available documentation that leave room for doubt. The question of the Silver Skulls' founding remains one of those persistent mysteries that plague the Administratum's attempts to maintain comprehensive records of all Space Marine chapters. What can be stated with reasonable certainty is that the chapter emerged in the aftermath of the heresy, during the period when Robute Guilliman's Codex Astartes restructured the remaining Loyalist legions. Whether they were among the first wave of successor chapters or came slightly later matters little to the Silver Skulls themselves, who have spent 10,000 years proving their loyalty and effectiveness regardless of the exact date of their founding. The chapter's early deployment took them far from the light of Terra, into the reaches of the Ultima Segmentum, where Imperial authority needed to be reasserted after the devastation of the Galactic Civil War. The Silver Skulls established their fortress monastery on Varsavia, a world in the Sarin system that would shape their character in ways that persist to the present day. Varsavia itself represented a significant departure from the typical recruitment world chosen by Space Marine chapters. Rather than a feral death world or a hive world locked in perpetual gank warfare, Varsavia was a planet with established traditions, a stable society, and most notably, a population that practiced various forms of divination and prognostication. The indigenous Varsavians had maintained their mystical traditions through Old Night and the Age of Strife, preserving practices that involved reading omens, interpreting signs, and attempting to glimpse possible futures. These traditions were not the crude superstitions of primitive peoples, but rather structured systems of interpretation that the Varsavians took with deadly seriousness. When the Silver Skulls arrived and began recruiting from the population, they encountered young warriors who had been raised to believe that the universe spoke to those who knew how to listen, that patterns existed beneath apparent chaos, and that careful observation could reveal what was to come. The fortress monastery that the chapter constructed on Varsavia became more than just a military installation. It incorporated elements of the local architecture, and more significantly, spaces dedicated to the practice of prognostication. The chapter's librarians found that Varsavia produced an unusually high number of psychers, individuals whose abilities could be harnessed for more than just the typical psychic disciplines employed by Space Marine librarians. These prognosticators, as they came to be known within the chapter, developed techniques that blended their psychic abilities with the traditional Varsavian methods of divination, creating something unique among the Adeptus Astartes. During the Great Scouring, that brutal period when the Loyalist forces hunted down the remnants of the traitor legions and purged worlds that had sided with Horus, the Silver Skulls began to establish their reputation. While other chapters threw themselves into battle with righteous fury, seeking to punish the traitors wherever they could be found, the Silver Skulls approached their campaigns with methodical precision. Before committing to an assault, the chapter's prognosticators would perform their rituals, casting the Emperor's tarot, reading entrails, interpreting the flight patterns of local birds, or employing whatever divinatory methods seemed appropriate to the situation. This practice set them apart from their fellow chapters, and occasionally caused friction with Imperial commanders who expected Space Marines to respond with immediate, overwhelming force. The Silver Skulls, however, demonstrated that their approach yielded results. Their strikes, when they came, were devastatingly effective because they had been planned with knowledge of enemy positions, likely responses, and optimal timing. They developed a reputation for appearing exactly where they were needed most, at precisely the moment when their intervention would have maximum impact. The chapter's campaigns during the Great Scouring took them across multiple sectors of the Ultima Segmentum. They participated in the purging of traitor holdouts on worlds that had declared for Horus, methodically dismantling resistance that might otherwise have required months of grinding warfare. Their ability to anticipate enemy movements and counterattacks meant that battles which could have devolved into prolonged sieges were instead resolved through precise surgical strikes. The Silver Skulls learned to trust in their Prognosticators' visions, even when those visions led them to seemingly counterintuitive tactical decisions. As the Great Scouring gave way to the long millennia of the Imperium's existence, the Silver Skulls continued to refine their practices. They adopted the Codex Astartes as their foundational organizational doctrine, structuring their 10 companies according to Guilliman's specifications and adhering to the tactical principles laid out in that comprehensive tome. The Codex provided the framework for their operations, dictating everything from squad organization to the proper deployment of armor and air support. Yet within this structure, the Silver Skulls maintained their unique cultural practices derived from Varsavia. The chapter's librarians became more than just psychers trained in the standard disciplines of biomancy, pyromancy, and telekinesis. They became prognosticators first and foremost, dedicating themselves to mastering the arts of divination and foresight. Each librarian underwent extensive training in Varsavian divinatory techniques, learning to read the Emperor's tarot with a skill that rivaled the most experienced sanctioned psychers of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica. They studied the traditional Varsavian methods of augury, interpreting signs and omens that others might dismiss as meaningless coincidence. This integration of local tradition with Codex doctrine created a chapter that was simultaneously orthodox and distinctive. The Silver Skulls never deviated from the fundamental principles that governed all Space Marine chapters. They maintained their gene seed purity, conducted their recruitment and training according to established protocols, and organized their forces in accordance with the Codex. But in the crucial matter of how they chose their battles and planned their campaigns, they followed a path that was uniquely their own. The fortress monastery on Varsavia became a place where tradition and innovation coexisted. New recruits learned not only the standard curriculum of every Space Marine neophyte, but also the basics of Varsavian prognostication. Even those who showed no psychic ability were taught to recognize omens, to understand the significance of seemingly random events, and to trust in the visions of their prognosticators. The chapter's command structure incorporated the Prognosticators' Council at every level, from squad-level operations to chapter-wide campaigns. Over the centuries and millennia, the Silver Skulls built a combat record that validated their approach. They responded to threats throughout the Ultima Segmentum, often arriving at trouble spots before official requests for aid had even been transmitted. Their prognosticators' visions guided them to worlds where Xeno's invasions were just beginning, where heretical cults were on the verge of open rebellion, or where chaos incursions threatened to tear reality apart. The chapter's ability to be in the right place at the right time became legendary among Imperial commanders in their region of space. The Silver Skulls' reputation as methodical warriors grew with each campaign. They were not the chapter you called upon when you needed an immediate, overwhelming response, but when you needed a threat eliminated with surgical precision, when you needed warriors who would study the enemy and strike at exactly the right moment, the Silver Skulls were unmatched. Their battle brothers learned patience, understanding that waiting for the proper moment was not cowardice, but wisdom. They learned to trust in visions that might seem cryptic or unclear, knowing that their prognosticators had proven their worth countless times. The world of Varsavia occupies a strategic position within the Sarin system, located in the Ultima Segmentum, far from the light of Terra, but close enough to major warp routes to serve as an effective staging ground for military operations across multiple subsectors. The planet itself presents a landscape dominated by vast mountain ranges that stretch across 3 of its 5 continents, their peaks reaching heights that pierce through the lower atmospheric layers. These mountains contain extensive deposits of silver ore, veins of the precious metal running through the rock in concentrations that would make Varsavia a target for administratum mining operations, were it not for the planet's status as a space marine recruitment world. the silver that gives the mountains their distinctive appearance when sunlight catches. The exposed ore veins also provided the chapter with its name and heraldry. The indigenous population had been mining these mountains for millennia, developing sophisticated techniques for extracting and working the metal long before the Imperium reached their world. Their settlements cling to the mountainsides, built from the same gray-white stone that forms the peaks themselves, creating communities that seem to grow organically from the landscape rather than being imposed upon it. Scattered throughout Varsavia's mountain ranges are structures that predate the Imperium by an unknowable span of time. These ruins show construction techniques and architectural principles that bear no resemblance to known human building traditions from the Age of Strife or earlier periods. The structures are not the work of any of the major Xenos races, whose building methods have been cataloged by the Imperium. They stand as silent testaments to some civilization that rose and fell on Varsavia before humanity claimed the world, their purpose and builders lost to time. The Varsavian population regarded these ruins with a mixture of reverence and caution, incorporating them into their divination practices as places where the veil between present and future seemed particularly thin. When the Silver Skulls established their presence on Varsavia, they chose to build their fortress monastery in the Cardian Range, the most extensive mountain system on the planet's primary continent. The location offered natural defensive advantages, with approaches that could be easily monitored and controlled, and the elevation provided clear sight lines across hundreds of kilometers of surrounding territory. The fortress monastery incorporated the existing Varsavian architectural traditions rather than imposing a purely imperial aesthetic, using the local stone-working techniques that had been refined over generations. The outer walls of the fortress monastery rise from the mountainside as if they had been carved from the peak itself, rather than built upon it. Varsavian stonemasons worked alongside chapter serfs and techmarines to create fortifications that blended imperial defensive requirements with local building methods. The result is a structure that appears less like a military installation imposed upon the landscape and more like a natural extension of the mountains themselves. Massive blocks of the gray-white stone, each weighing several tons, were cut and fitted with such precision that the joints between them are barely visible. The walls incorporate veins of silver ore that run through the stone, creating patterns that the Varsavians interpret as protective symbols. The fortress monastery extends deep into the mountain, with entire levels carved from the living rock. The chapter's armory occupies vast chambers where the temperature remains constant year-round, ideal for the maintenance and storage of weapons and equipment. The gene seed repositories are located in the deepest levels, protected by hundreds of meters of solid rock and multiple layers of security. Training halls, dormitories, stratagems, and all the other facilities required by a Space Marine chapter spread through the mountain in a complex that took decades to complete and continues to be expanded as the chapter's needs evolve. The Reclusium occupies a prominent position within the fortress monastery, its chambers decorated with silver skulls that reference both the chapter's name and the Varsavian tradition of honoring the dead. The chaplains maintain records of every battle brother who has served in the chapter, their deeds recorded and preserved so that future generations can learn from their example. The Reclusium also houses the chapter's most sacred relics, including fragments of armor said to have belonged to Robute Guilliman himself, though the provenance of such items is always difficult to verify with absolute certainty. The Librarius represents the heart of the chapter's unique character. The Librarians maintain extensive facilities dedicated to the practice of prognostication, chambers designed according to Varsavian principles to facilitate divination. These rooms are arranged to align with specific astronomical phenomena, their walls inscribed with symbols and calculations that aid in the interpretation of visions and omens. The chapter's collection of Emperor's Tarot decks includes examples dating back to the earliest days of the Imperium, each deck maintained with reverence and used only by the most experienced prognosticators. The Apothecarium maintains the chapter's gene seed with the same meticulous care expected of all Space Marine chapters. The apothecaries work closely with the librarians, understanding that Varsavia's population produces an unusually high percentage of individuals with psychic potential. This characteristic is carefully monitored to ensure it does not indicate mutation or corruption, but rather represents a stable trait that has proven valuable to the chapter. The gene seed itself shows no deviation from expected patterns, maintaining the purity that would be expected of Ultramarines' lineage if the chapter's claimed descent is accurate. The fortress monastery's strategic position in the Ultima Segmentum makes it an ideal staging ground for operations across a vast region of space. The Sarin system sits at the convergence of several stable warp routes, allowing the chapter to respond relatively quickly to threats in multiple subsectors. The chapter maintains a network of listening posts and monitoring stations throughout nearby systems, gathering intelligence that supplements the visions of their prognosticators. This combination of mundane intelligence gathering and psychic divination gives the Silver Skulls a comprehensive understanding of threats developing in their region of responsibility. The relationship between the chapter and Varsavia's human population follows patterns established in the earliest days of the Silver Skull's presence on the world. The mountain clans that inhabit the high peaks provide the vast majority of the chapter's recruits, their young warriors already hardened by the harsh conditions of life at extreme altitude. These clans maintain their traditional ways, including their prognostication practices, which the chapter not only tolerates but actively encourages. The Silver Skulls understand that the cultural foundation provided by Varsavian traditions produces recruits who are already predisposed to accept the importance of divination and omen reading. Recruitment follows a pattern dictated both by practical considerations and by the visions of the chapter's prognosticators. Young warriors from the mountain clans undergo trials that test their physical capabilities, mental resilience, and potential for psychic ability. These trials take place in the ruins scattered throughout the mountains, locations chosen because the prognosticators have identified them as places where an individual's true nature becomes more apparent. The trials are brutal, designed to push candidates to their absolute limits and beyond, but they are not arbitrary. Each test serves a specific purpose in identifying those who possess the qualities the chapter requires. The mountain clans consider it the highest honor to have one of their sons chosen by the Silver Skulls. Families that have provided recruits to the chapter maintain detailed genealogies, tracking bloodlines that have proven successful in producing worthy candidates. The chapter does not interfere with the clan's internal affairs beyond the recruitment process, allowing them to maintain their traditional governance structures and cultural practices. This hands-off approach has fostered a relationship of mutual respect, with the clans viewing the Silver Skulls as honored guardians rather than distant overlords. The fortress monastery serves not only as the chapter's home, but as a symbol of the Imperium's presence in the region. Local populations on nearby worlds know that the Silver Skulls watch over them, that the prognosticators in their mountain fortress work to identify threats before they fully manifest. This knowledge provides a degree of psychological security, the understanding that superhuman warriors stand ready to respond to dangers that ordinary humans could never hope to face alone. The chapter maintains extensive training facilities within and around the fortress monastery, ranges where battle brothers practice with every weapon in the Space Marine arsenal. The mountainous terrain provides ideal conditions for training in difficult environments, teaching new battle brothers to fight effectively in conditions where footing is uncertain, and the air is thin enough to challenge even enhanced physiology. Veterans of the chapter lead these training exercises, passing on lessons learned in centuries of warfare across the galaxy. The fortress monastery's position also makes it a waypoint for Imperial forces moving through the region. While the Silver Skulls maintain the independence expected of a Space Marine chapter, they recognize the value of coordination with other Imperial military forces. The Strategium regularly hosts briefings with Imperial Guard commanders, inquisitors, and representatives of other Imperial organizations, sharing intelligence and coordinating responses to threats that require more than a single chapter can provide. The Silver Skulls maintain their gene seed with a level of care that exemplifies the standards expected of all Space Marine chapters, regardless of their specific founding or lineage. The chapter's apothecarian operates under protocols that have remained essentially unchanged since the earliest days of their establishment, ensuring that each generation of battle brothers receives genetic material of the highest possible purity. The progenitor glands, those crucial organs that develop within each space marine and produce the gene seed for future generations, are monitored throughout a battle brother's service with meticulous attention to any sign of deviation or degradation. The chapter's claimed descent from the Ultramarines Legion carries with it certain expectations regarding genetic stability. The Ultramarines' gene seed is recognized throughout the Imperium as among the most stable and pure, showing minimal mutation rates across 10,000 years of use in countless successor chapters. The Silver Skull's genetic material demonstrates characteristics consistent with this heritage, exhibiting the same robust stability and lack of significant mutations that mark Ultramarines' lineage. The 19 implanted organs that transform a human youth into a space marine develop according to expected patterns, with rejection rates and complications occurring within acceptable parameters. The screening process for potential recruits begins long before a candidate undergoes the first surgical procedures. The apothecaries work in conjunction with the chapter's librarians to identify young warriors from the Varsavian mountain clans, who possess not only the physical attributes required, but also the genetic compatibility necessary for successful implantation. Blood samples are taken and analyzed using equipment maintained by the chapter's tech marines, sophisticated gene sequencing devices that can identify markers indicating likely acceptance or rejection of the gene seed. Candidates who show genetic predispositions toward mutation or instability are rejected regardless of their other qualities, as the chapter cannot risk compromising the purity of their genetic legacy. The process of creating a space marine follows the same fundamental pattern used by chapters across the Imperium, a procedure refined over millennia and codified in texts that trace their origins back to the Emperor himself. The first implants are introduced during the candidate's adolescence, when the body's natural growth processes can be directed and enhanced by the additional organs. The secondary heart, the osmodula that reinforces the skeleton, the biscopia that builds muscle mass beyond human norms, each organ is implanted according to a precise schedule that allows the body to adapt to each change before introducing the next. The apothecaries monitor each neophyte constantly during this transformation, watching for signs of rejection or unexpected complications. The process is dangerous, and not all candidates survive. Those who do emerge as something more than human, their bodies enhanced to withstand conditions that would kill an unmodified person instantly. The progenitor glands, implanted at different stages of development, begin their slow maturation process, growing within the neophyte's body and producing the gene seed that will eventually be harvested to create the next generation of silver skulls. The chapter's apothecaries pay particular attention to the development of psychic potential in their neophytes, given Varsavia's tendency to produce individuals with latent abilities. The presence of psychic talent does not indicate genetic corruption, but rather represents a stable characteristic of the recruitment pool. Those who show significant psychic ability are directed toward training in the Librarians, where they will eventually become Prognosticators if they survive the rigorous and dangerous process of learning to control their powers. The gene seed itself does not appear to cause or enhance psychic ability, but rather interacts with existing potential in ways that the apothecaries have learned to predict and manage. Battle Brothers of the Silver Skulls display physical characteristics that fall within the expected range for Space Marines. They stand approximately 7 to 8 feet tall when not armored, their enhanced musculature giving them builds that appear impossibly massive to unaugmented humans. Their skin tones reflect the Varsavian population from which they are recruited, generally pale due to the high-altitude environments where the mountain clans live and the reduced exposure to direct sunlight in those regions. The chapter's gene seed does not produce the distinctive features that mark some other lineages. No fangs or unusual eye colorations or other obvious physical markers that would immediately identify their heritage. The enhanced physiology granted by the gene seed manifests in ways that are consistent across all properly functioning Space Marine chapters. Silver Skull's battle brothers can survive in environments that would kill unaugmented humans within minutes, their multi-lung allowing them to breathe in atmospheres with reduced oxygen content, or even to survive brief periods of vacuum exposure. Their Librarians' organ causes their blood to clot almost instantly when they are wounded, preventing blood loss that would be fatal to normal humans. The catalepsian node in their brains allows them to remain alert and functional even when portions of their brain are resting, effectively eliminating the need for normal sleep patterns. The Becher's gland, which allows Space Marines to spit blinding or corrosive venom, functions normally in Silver Skull's battle brothers, though the chapter does not emphasize this capability in their combat doctrine. The preomner, that pre-stomach that can neutralize otherwise poisonous or indigestible materials, allows them to derive nutrition from substances that would sicken or kill ordinary humans, a capability that has proven valuable during extended campaigns where normal supply lines have been disrupted. The oolytic kidney filters their blood and allows them to survive on minimal water, while the neuroglottis in their mouths enables them to taste and analyze chemical compositions by simply placing substances on their tongues. The chapter's gene seed tithing to the Adeptus Mechanicus follows the standard protocols established for all Space Marine chapters. Every few decades, the Silver Skulls deliver a portion of their accumulated gene seed to the Mechanicus facilities designated for such transfers, usually on Mars itself, though sometimes to major forge worlds closer to the Ultima Segmentum, when warp conditions make travel to the solar system impractical. These tithes serve multiple purposes, providing the Mechanicus with genetic material for study and analysis, while also creating a strategic reserve that could theoretically be used to rebuild the chapter if it suffered catastrophic losses. The Mechanicus evaluations of Silver Skull's gene seed have consistently returned assessments indicating high purity and stability. The genetic material shows no signs of the degradation that has affected some chapters over the millennia, no creeping mutations that might indicate corruption by chaos or simple genetic drift. The progenitor glands produce viable gene seed at expected rates, with both the neck-implanted progenitor that matures after 5 years and the chest-implanted organ that requires 10 years developing according to normal patterns. The Mechanicus records, maintained with their characteristic obsessive attention to detail, show that Silver Skull's gene seed has maintained this consistency across thousands of years. The chapter's exemplary record of genetic stability has made their gene seed valuable for studies conducted by the Mechanicus into the factors that contribute to long-term viability of Space Marine genetic material. While the Silver Skulls do not receive detailed reports on how their gene seed is used beyond the standard tithing requirements, they understand that maintaining this record of purity serves the broader interests of the Imperium. Some chapters have seen their gene seed become so degraded or mutated that they can no longer produce new battle brothers reliably, a fate the Silver Skulls have avoided through careful monitoring and strict adherence to proper procedures. The Apothecarian within the Fortress Monastery on Varsavia maintains facilities that rival those of much older and more prominent chapters. The gene seed repositories are kept in conditions of perfect stasis, the temperature and atmospheric composition controlled to preserve the genetic material indefinitely. Each progenitor gland harvested from a fallen or aging battle brother is cataloged with exhaustive detail, recording not only the genetic information, but also the complete service record of the brother from whom it was taken. This practice allows the apothecaries to track any potential hereditary factors that might affect gene seed quality, identifying bloodlines that produce particularly stable or successful implantation rates. The sacred duty of recovering progenitor glands from fallen battle brothers is taken with absolute seriousness by every member of the chapter. Apothecaries accompany their brothers into battle, specifically to ensure that gene seed can be recovered even from those who fall in combat. The Narthecium, that specialized medical device carried by all apothecaries, includes the reductor drill designed specifically for extracting progenitor glands from fallen space marines. In the chaos of battle, when enemies press from all sides and the situation appears desperate, apothecaries work to reach fallen brothers and perform the extraction before the gene seed can be damaged or destroyed. The chapter has developed specific protocols for situations where gene seed recovery becomes impossible or impractical. When a battle brother falls in circumstances where his body cannot be recovered, such as being consumed by certain Xenos organisms or lost in warp anomalies, the loss is recorded with appropriate ceremony, but without the guilt or shame that might accompany such situations in other chapters. The Silver Skulls understand that their prognosticators cannot foresee every outcome, that despite all efforts to divine the future and plan accordingly, some losses are inevitable. The gene seed reserves maintained both within the chapter and through the Mechanicus tithes provide insurance against such losses. The physical training regimen that battle brothers undergo throughout their service ensures that their enhanced bodies remain at peak performance. The Fortress Monastery's training facilities see constant use as battle brothers drill with weapons, practice combat maneuvers, and push their enhanced physiology to its limits. The high-altitude environment of Varsavia provides natural resistance training, the thin air forcing even enhanced respiratory systems to work harder than they would at sea level. Veterans who have served for centuries maintain physical capabilities that would seem impossible for organisms of their age, the combination of gene seed enhancements and constant training allowing them to function at levels that younger battle brothers struggle to match. The chapter's apothecaries maintain detailed medical histories for every battle brother, tracking injuries sustained, treatments administered, and any complications that arise during the long decades or centuries of service. This information feeds into the broader understanding of how gene seed performs over extended periods, identifying patterns that might indicate developing problems before they become serious. Battle brothers who sustain injuries that would cripple or kill normal humans often return to full combat capability after treatment, their enhanced healing abilities, and the skills of the apothecaries combining to repair damage that should be permanent. The succinate membrane, that organ that can place a space marine into suspended animation when critically injured, has saved countless silver skulls over the millennia. Battle brothers who suffer catastrophic trauma can enter this state automatically, their bodies shutting down all non-essential functions to preserve life until an apothecary can provide treatment. The chapter's medical facilities include specialized chambers designed to maintain brothers in succinate coma for extended periods if necessary, though the apothecaries work to revive and treat such cases as quickly as possible to minimize the time spent in this vulnerable state. The chapter's gene seed monitoring extends beyond simple medical necessity into the realm of sacred duty. The chaplains work closely with the apothecaries to ensure that the spiritual and physical aspects of gene seed preservation receive equal attention. The Reclusiam maintains its own records of genetic lineages, tracking which battle brothers trace their gene seed heritage back to particularly distinguished ancestors. While all gene seed is equally valuable from a practical standpoint, the chapter recognizes the symbolic importance of continuity, the knowledge that the genetic legacy of heroes from millennia past continues to create new generations of warriors. The Librarians of the Silver Skulls differs from those of other chapters not in its fundamental purpose, but in the specific methods and cultural framework through which that purpose is pursued. Every Space Marine chapter that maintains a Librarius trains its psychers in the standard disciplines codified by the Imperium, teaching them to harness the powers of the warp while maintaining the mental fortifications necessary to resist demonic corruption. The Silver Skulls follow these same protocols, sending their psychically gifted battle brothers through the same rigorous training that produces librarians across the Adeptus Astartes. What distinguishes the Silver Skulls is the additional layer of training and purpose that transforms their librarians into prognosticators, specialists in divination who guide the chapter's strategic decisions through their interpretations of what is to come. The selection of candidates for the Librarians begins during the standard recruitment process, when young warriors from the Varsavian mountain clans undergo testing to determine their suitability for transformation into Space Marines. The apothecaries and existing librarians work together during these evaluations, identifying those candidates who display psychic potential alongside the physical attributes necessary for successful gene seed implantation. Varsavia's population produces psykers at a rate notably higher than baseline human populations, a characteristic that has been documented and studied extensively by the chapter's apothecaries to ensure it represents a stable trait rather than genetic corruption or warp taint. Candidates identified as possessing psychic potential follow a modified path through their initial training and implantation. They receive the same gene seed organs as all other neophytes, undergo the same physical conditioning, and learn the same fundamental combat skills. The difference emerges in the additional instruction they receive in recognizing and controlling their nascent abilities. The Varsavian cultural background of these recruits provides an advantage in this regard, as they come from clans that practice various forms of divination and omen reading. They arrive at the chapter already predisposed to accept that the universe contains patterns and meanings that can be interpreted by those with the knowledge and ability to do so. The training of a prognosticator extends far beyond the standard Librarians instruction in psychic disciplines. While they must master the same fundamental techniques as all Space Marine librarians, learning to channel warp energy safely and effectively, they also undergo extensive education in the specific arts of divination. The Emperor's Tarot forms the cornerstone of this training, that ancient system of cartomancy that has been used throughout the Imperium for millennia to glimpse possible futures and divine the Emperor's will. The Silver Skulls maintain multiple decks of the Tarot, some dating back to the earliest days of the Imperium, each deck treated as a sacred relic and used only by the most experienced prognosticators. Learning to read the Emperor's Tarot properly requires years of study and practice. The deck contains 78 cards divided into the major and minor arcana, each card carrying multiple layers of meaning that shift depending on position, orientation, and relationship to other cards in a spread. A novice prognosticator begins by memorizing the basic meanings of each card, the Tower representing sudden change or destruction, the Emperor signifying authority and order, the Void speaking of absence or potential. These surface meanings provide only the foundation for true interpretation, which requires understanding the subtle interactions between cards and the intuitive leaps that separate mere fortune-telling from genuine divination. The training incorporates Varsavian techniques that predate the chapter's founding, methods passed down through generations of mountain clan seers and mystics. These practices include the reading of natural phenomena, interpreting the flight patterns of birds native to Varsavia's high peaks, observing the behavior of local fauna before storms, and studying the patterns formed by wind-blown snow on mountainsides. To an outsider, these methods might appear as primitive superstition, but the prognosticators understand them as additional data sources that can supplement and confirm psychic visions. The Varsavian techniques provide a framework for organizing and interpreting the often chaotic impressions that emerge from psychic scrying. Psychic scrying itself represents one of the most demanding disciplines a prognosticator must master. Unlike the more direct psychic powers that librarians use in combat, projecting bolts of warp energy or reinforcing their bodies with supernatural strength, scrying requires a delicate touch and absolute mental discipline. The prognosticator enters a meditative state, opening his consciousness to impressions from the warp while maintaining the mental barriers that prevent demonic intrusion. The visions that emerge are rarely clear or straightforward, appearing instead as fragmentary images, symbolic representations, or emotional impressions that must be interpreted through training and experience. The chapter maintains specialized chambers within the fortress monastery designed to facilitate these divination rituals. These rooms are arranged according to principles derived from Varsavian mystical traditions, their dimensions and orientations calculated to align with specific astronomical phenomena. The walls bear inscriptions in High Gothic and older languages, prayers and protective wards that help focus psychic energy and ward against malevolent influences. Some chambers contain elaborate geometric patterns inlaid in silver extracted from Varsavia's mountains, the metal's natural properties believed by the Varsavians to enhance psychic receptivity. A typical divination session before a major campaign involves multiple prognosticators working in concert, each approaching the question from different angles using different techniques. One might cast the Emperor's Tarot, laying out an elaborate spread that examines various aspects of the upcoming operation. Another might enter a trance state and attempt direct psychic scrying, opening his consciousness to impressions of possible futures. A third might employ Varsavian augury techniques, observing the behavior of caged birds or interpreting patterns in scattered bones carved with significant symbols. The results of these various methods are then compared and analyzed, looking for points of agreement or significant contradictions that might indicate multiple possible outcomes. The interpretation of divination results requires as much skill as the performance of the rituals themselves. Visions from the warp are notoriously unreliable, showing possible futures rather than certainties, and the presence of powerful psychers or warp phenomena can distort readings in unpredictable ways. The prognosticators must weigh what they see against practical military considerations, intelligence gathered through conventional means, and their understanding of how the enemy is likely to respond. A vision showing victory might be accurate, or it might represent one possible outcome among many, or it might be a false impression created by warp turbulence or enemy psychers attempting to mislead. The influence of the prognosticators on chapter strategy and tactics extends throughout the entire command structure. Before the chapter commits to a campaign, the senior prognosticators present their findings to the chapter master and his command staff. These presentations go beyond simple predictions of success or failure, offering detailed analyses of optimal timing, recommended approach vectors, likely enemy responses, and potential complications that might arise. The chapter master weighs this guidance against other factors, including the strategic importance of the objective, the availability of forces, and commitments to other operations, but the prognosticator's counsel carries significant weight in the final decision. At the company level, each company maintains at least one prognosticator who provides guidance for that formation's operations. These librarians perform divinations before significant engagements, advising company commanders on deployment patterns and tactical approaches most likely to succeed. A prognosticator might recommend that a particular squad be held in reserve because the visions suggest they will be needed to counter an unexpected threat, or that an assault be delayed by several hours because the omens indicate the enemy will be more vulnerable at a specific time. Company commanders learn to trust these recommendations even when they seem counterintuitive, understanding that the prognosticator's track record validates their methods. The prognosticators do not claim infallibility, and the chapter's doctrine acknowledges that divination provides guidance rather than certainty. Visions can be misinterpreted, circumstances can change, and the inherent chaos of combat can render even accurate predictions useless if they cannot be acted upon in time. The prognosticators themselves undergo constant training to improve their interpretive skills and refine their techniques, studying past divinations to understand where their readings were accurate and where they failed. This process of continuous improvement has been ongoing for millennia, each generation of prognosticators building on the accumulated knowledge of their predecessors. The chapter's approach to target selection demonstrates the practical application of prognostication in strategic planning. Rather than simply responding to requests for aid or following orders from higher imperial authorities, the Silver Skulls actively use their divinations to identify threats before they fully manifest. A prognosticator might receive visions of a particular world or system, seeing images that suggest impending danger even though no distress calls have been received and no intelligence reports indicate problems. The chapter investigates these visions, dispatching scouts or consulting with local imperial authorities, and frequently discovers that the prognosticators' impressions were accurate, that a threat was indeed developing beneath the surface of apparent normalcy. This proactive approach to threat identification has occasionally created friction with Imperial commanders who expect Space Marines to respond to orders rather than acting on their own initiative. The Silver Skulls navigate these situations carefully, understanding that their independence as a Space Marine chapter gives them considerable latitude, but that maintaining good relations with other Imperial organizations serves the chapter's long-term interests. They provide explanations for their actions when practical, sharing intelligence gathered through both conventional and psychic means, demonstrating that their decisions are based on solid reasoning rather than mere whim. The training regimen for prognosticators combines physical and mental disciplines in ways that push even enhanced Space Marine physiology to its limits. A prognosticator must maintain the same combat readiness as any other battle brother, training constantly with weapons and tactics, keeping his body at peak performance. Simultaneously, he must dedicate hours each day to psychic exercises, meditation practices that strengthen mental barriers and improve control over his abilities. The Varsavian augury techniques require their own study time, practicing the observation and interpretation skills that allow natural phenomena to be read as omens. The most experienced prognosticators, those who have served the chapter for centuries and survived countless campaigns, develop an almost instinctive ability to sense when divination is necessary. They report feeling subtle impressions, a sense that something significant is about to occur, or that a particular decision carries more weight than it might appear. These feelings are not psychic visions in the formal sense, but rather the product of long experience combined with latent psychic sensitivity, an ability to detect patterns in the warp's currents that less experienced psychers might miss entirely. The chapter maintains detailed records of all divinations performed, creating an archive that spans millennia and contains thousands of documented cases. These records serve multiple purposes, providing training material for new prognosticators who study how visions were interpreted and how accurate those interpretations proved to be. They also allow the chapter to identify patterns in how different types of threats manifest in divinations, building a body of knowledge about what specific symbols or images tend to indicate. A vision of burning skies might suggest imminent orbital bombardment, while images of corruption spreading through stone could indicate chaos cult activity in urban environments. The relationship between the prognosticators and the chapter's chaplains represents an interesting dynamic within the Silver Skull's command structure. The chaplains maintain the chapter's spiritual health and ensure adherence to proper doctrine, roles that could potentially conflict with the prognosticators' reliance on methods that might be viewed as superstitious by more orthodox elements of the Imperium. The Silver Skulls have resolved this tension by integrating the chaplains into the divination process, having them present during major rituals to ensure that proper prayers and observances are maintained and that no hint of corruption or heresy taints the proceedings. The prognosticators understand that their abilities and methods, while valuable, also carry inherent risks. Psychers who delve too deeply into the warp or who become too confident in their visions can fall prey to demonic corruption or simple hubris. The chapter's screening processes and ongoing monitoring help identify battle brothers who might be developing problematic attitudes or behaviors, intervening before minor issues become serious threats. The Librarians maintains its own internal hierarchy and discipline, with senior prognosticators responsible for evaluating their subordinates and ensuring that standards are maintained. The Silver Skulls adhere to the organizational framework established by the Codex Astartes, maintaining the standard 10-company structure that has served as the foundation for Space Marine chapters since the second founding. This adherence to Guilliman's organizational principles provides the chapter with a proven command structure and tactical flexibility, while allowing them to integrate seamlessly with other Imperial forces during joint operations. The Codex specifies not only the number and composition of companies, but also the roles each formation plays within the chapter's overall strategic capabilities, creating a system that has endured for 10,000 years because of its fundamental soundness. The first company, designated as the Veteran Company, contains the chapter's most experienced warriors, battle brothers who have proven themselves across decades or centuries of combat. These veterans have earned the right to wear tactical dreadnought armor, the revered Terminator suits that provide unmatched protection and firepower. The first company typically numbers around 100 battle brothers, though this figure fluctuates based on combat losses and the promotion of worthy candidates from the battle companies. The veterans serve as the chapter's strategic reserve, deployed when situations require the most skilled warriors available, or when fighting in conditions where Terminator armor provides decisive advantages, such as boarding actions in the confined spaces of enemy vessels or assaults on heavily fortified positions. The first company maintains its own prognosticator, invariably one of the chapter's most experienced librarians, whose divinations focus specifically on the deployment and utilization of the veteran forces. This prognosticator works closely with the company captain to identify situations where the veteran's intervention will prove most valuable, reading omens and casting the Emperor's Tarot to determine optimal timing and deployment patterns. The first company's operations often involve responding to threats identified through divination before conventional intelligence sources have recognized the danger, striking with overwhelming force at critical moments to eliminate enemies who might otherwise have grown into major threats. Companies 2 through 5 serve as the chapter's battle companies, each maintaining a full complement of 6 tactical squads, 2 assault squads, and 2 devastator squads, along with appropriate command elements and vehicle support. These formations represent the chapter's primary fighting strength, capable of conducting independent operations or combining for larger campaigns. Each battle company numbers approximately 100 battle brothers when at full strength, though combat losses and other factors mean that actual numbers vary. The battle companies deploy across the Ultima Segmentum and beyond, responding to threats identified through both conventional channels and prognostication. The integration of prognosticators into each battle company's command structure represents one of the Silver Skull's most significant deviations from standard Codex practice. While many chapters assign librarians to companies as needed, the Silver Skulls ensure that each battle company has at least one prognosticator permanently attached to its command staff. This librarian serves not merely as a psychic asset to be deployed in combat, but as a strategic advisor whose counsel shapes how the company approaches its missions. The company captain and his sergeants learn to incorporate the prognosticator's visions into their tactical planning, understanding that this guidance has proven its value countless times. The prognosticator assigned to a battle company performs divinations before major engagements, examining the Emperor's Tarot or entering trance states to receive impressions of what is to come. These sessions occur in dedicated spaces within the company's assigned areas of the Fortress Monastery or aboard the strike cruisers that transport the companies between war zones. The visions received during these divinations inform decisions about force composition, approach vectors, timing of assaults, and contingency planning for unexpected developments. A prognosticator might advise that a particular squad be held in reserve because the omens suggest they will be needed to counter a threat not yet apparent, or recommend a specific route of advance because the visions indicate enemy forces will be weakest in that sector. Companies 6 through 9 function as reserve companies, maintaining specialized roles within the chapter's structure. The 6th and 7th companies serve as tactical reserve, containing exclusively tactical squads that can be deployed to reinforce battle companies or respond to emerging threats. The 8th company operates as the assault reserve, its squads equipped and trained for rapid strike operations and close combat engagements. The 9th company functions as the devastator reserve, providing heavy weapons support and fire superiority when situations require concentrated firepower. These reserve companies train constantly, maintaining readiness to deploy at short notice when the prognosticators identify threats or when battle companies require reinforcement. The 10th Company differs fundamentally from the others, serving as the scout company where new recruits undergo their final training before becoming full battle brothers. The scouts learn reconnaissance, infiltration, and marksmanship under the guidance of veteran sergeants who have been selected specifically for their teaching abilities and patience. The 10th Company operates with greater flexibility in terms of numbers than the other companies, as the flow of recruits from Varsavia and the attrition rate among scouts means that strength fluctuates significantly. Scouts who show psychic potential receive additional observation and testing during this phase, as the Librarius evaluates whether they should be directed toward training as prognosticators. The chapter master holds ultimate authority over the Silver Skulls, his word carrying the weight of law within the chapter, and his decisions shaping strategy across decades or centuries. The position demands not only exceptional combat prowess and tactical acumen, but also the wisdom to balance the guidance provided by prognosticators against practical military considerations and the chapter's broader strategic obligations. The chapter master must understand when to trust in visions and omens, and when to rely on conventional military analysis, a judgment that comes only from long experience and deep familiarity with how divination functions within the chapter's operations. The chapter master's command staff includes the usual positions found in Codex-compliant chapters: the Master of Sanctity, who leads the chaplains, the Master of the Forge, who oversees the Tech Marines and the chapter's equipment, the Chief Apothecary, who maintains the gene seed and the Battle Brothers' physical health, and the Master of the Arsenal, who commands the First Company. The Silver Skulls add to this structure the position of Chief Prognosticator, the senior-most librarian, who serves as the chapter master's primary advisor on all matters involving divination and psychic warfare. This position carries weight equivalent to the other senior officers, with the Chief Prognosticator participating in all major strategic discussions and providing counsel that significantly influences the chapter's decisions. The Chief Prognosticator coordinates the activities of all the chapter's librarians, ensuring that divination efforts are properly focused and that prognosticators assigned to individual companies receive the support and guidance they require. This role involves not only administrative duties, but also the performance of the most significant divinations, those that examine threats to the chapter as a whole or attempt to glimpse events years or decades in the future. The Chief Prognosticator maintains the chapter's archives of past divinations, studying patterns and refining interpretive techniques based on accumulated experience spanning millennia. The Chapter Council serves as the primary decision-making body for matters affecting the entire chapter, convening when situations require collective judgment rather than the chapter master's sole authority. The council includes the chapter master, his command staff, and the captains of the 10 companies, creating a body that represents both the chapter's leadership and its operational commanders. During council sessions, the chief prognosticator presents the results of divinations relevant to the matters under discussion, offering interpretations and recommendations based on what the visions suggest. The company captains provide reports on their formation's status and readiness, while the master of the forge addresses equipment and logistical concerns. The balance between tactical pragmatism and prophetic guidance plays out in every council session, as the assembled officers weigh multiple factors in reaching their decisions. A prognosticator might present visions suggesting that the chapter should commit forces to a particular war zone, but practical considerations such as existing commitments, travel time, and the availability of appropriate forces must be factored into the final decision. The council operates through discussion and debate rather than rigid adherence to hierarchy, with junior officers expected to voice concerns or alternative perspectives when they believe circumstances warrant such input. Company captains within the Silver Skulls maintain considerable autonomy when operating independently, a necessity given the vast distances of the Ultima Segmentum and the communication delays inherent in interstellar warfare. A captain commanding a battle company, deployed several subsectors away from Varsavia, cannot wait for instructions from the chapter master, when situations demand immediate response. The captain relies on his attached prognosticator's guidance, his own experience and judgment, and the counsel of his sergeants to make decisions that might commit his company to extended campaigns or significant battles. The chapter master trusts his captains to act in accordance with the chapter's principles and strategic objectives, understanding that excessive centralization of command would paralyze the chapter's ability to respond to the multitude of threats constantly emerging across Imperial space. The command structure within individual companies follows Codex patterns, with the captain supported by a command squad that includes veterans selected for their skills and experience. The company champion serves as the captain's personal guardian and the embodiment of the company's martial pride. The company ancient carries the formation's sacred banner, a relic that has been born into countless battles and around which the company rallies in the most desperate moments. The company's attached prognosticator functions as part of this command element, though his role differs from the purely military positions held by the other members. Sergeants command the individual squads that make up each company, positions earned through demonstrated leadership ability and combat effectiveness. A sergeant must understand not only how to employ his squad effectively, but also how to interpret and implement guidance from the company's prognosticator, translating visions and omens into practical tactical decisions. The relationship between sergeants and prognosticators develops over years of service together, building trust and mutual understanding that allows them to function effectively even in the chaos of combat when clear communication becomes difficult or impossible. The chapter maintains several strike cruisers and numerous smaller vessels that provide transportation and orbital support for deployed companies. Each battle company typically has access to a strike cruiser that serves as its mobile base of operations, containing facilities for maintenance, medical treatment, and the performance of divination rituals. These vessels are commanded by chapter serfs who have served the Silver Skulls for decades, learning to work seamlessly with the space marines they transport. The ship's crews understand the importance of the prognosticator's work and ensure that appropriate spaces are maintained for divination sessions, even in the cramped confines of a warship. The fortress monastery on Varsavia serves as the chapter's ultimate headquarters and the location where the most significant strategic planning occurs. When multiple companies are present on the home world simultaneously, the chapter master can convene larger gatherings that allow for coordination of efforts across multiple theaters of operation. The Strategium contains detailed maps and intelligence archives covering vast regions of the Ultima Segmentum, information gathered through centuries of operations and constantly updated as new data arrives. The prognosticators use this information in conjunction with their divinations, cross-referencing visions against known facts to develop more accurate interpretations. The integration of prognostication into the command structure extends down to the squad level in subtle ways. While individual squads do not have dedicated prognosticators, the guidance provided to company and chapter leadership filters down through the chain of command. A sergeant might receive orders that seem unusual or counterintuitive, instructions to position his squad in a location that appears tactically questionable, or to wait for a specific signal before advancing. The sergeant executes these orders understanding that they likely derive from prognostication, that someone with the ability to glimpse possible futures has determined this is the optimal approach even if the reasoning is not immediately apparent. The chapter's approach to command and control emphasizes flexibility and adaptation, recognizing that no plan survives contact with the enemy unchanged, and that even accurate divinations cannot account for every variable in complex military operations. Officers at all levels train to think independently and adjust their approaches as situations develop, using prognostic guidance as one input among many rather than treating visions as absolute predictions that must be followed regardless of circumstances. This pragmatic approach has served the chapter well across millennia, allowing them to benefit from their prognosticators' abilities without becoming paralyzed by over-reliance on divination. The training of officers incorporates instruction in how to work effectively with prognosticators, teaching future captains and sergeants to understand the nature of divination and its limitations. Officers learn to ask the right questions when consulting with prognosticators, framing their inquiries in ways that are most likely to produce useful guidance. They study past cases where divinations proved accurate and cases where interpretations failed, developing an understanding of the factors that affect reliability and the warning signs that might indicate a vision should be treated with particular caution. The Silver Skull's approach to warfare reflects a fundamental belief that victory belongs to those who prepare most thoroughly, who study their enemies with patience, and who strike only when the moment is right. This philosophy permeates every aspect of the chapter's combat operations, from the strategic selection of targets to the tactical execution of individual engagements. Where some chapters might prioritize aggressive assault or overwhelming firepower, the Silver Skulls emphasize methodical preparation guided by the visions of their prognosticators, combined with strict adherence to the tactical principles codified in the Codex Astartes. The planning phase before any significant operation begins with extensive divination sessions conducted by the chapter's prognosticators. These sessions might occur days or even weeks before the first shot is fired, with multiple librarians approaching the question from different angles using various divinatory techniques. The chief prognosticator coordinates these efforts, ensuring that the Emperor's Tarot is cast properly, that psychic scrying sessions are conducted under appropriate conditions, and that Varsavian augury methods are employed to supplement the purely psychic approaches. The results of these divinations are compiled and analyzed, looking for patterns and consistencies that might indicate genuine glimpses of what is to come rather than false impressions or warp interference. The intelligence gathered through prognostication gets cross-referenced against conventional reconnaissance data, reports from imperial authorities in the target area, and the chapter's own historical records of similar operations. The Silver Skulls maintain extensive archives documenting thousands of engagements across millennia, cataloging enemy tactics, terrain types, and the outcomes of various approaches. This combination of mystical guidance and practical military analysis produces operational plans that account for multiple contingencies and identify the most promising avenues of attack. A prognosticator might receive visions showing a particular fortress wall section glowing with significance, prompting detailed reconnaissance of that area that reveals structural weaknesses not apparent from standard observation. The chapter's tactical doctrine emphasizes combined arms warfare, the coordinated employment of different unit types and weapon systems to create effects greater than the sum of their parts. Tactical squads form the backbone of most operations, their versatile armament allowing them to engage threats at various ranges while maintaining the flexibility to adapt to changing circumstances. Assault squads provide rapid response capabilities and close combat power, their jump packs allowing them to redeploy quickly or strike at enemy positions that might otherwise be difficult to reach. Devastator squads deliver concentrated firepower, their heavy weapons eliminating enemy armor, fortifications, or massed infantry that might otherwise slow an advance. The Silver Skulls make extensive use of armored vehicles to enhance their tactical flexibility and provide protected mobility for their battle brothers. Rhino armored personnel carriers transport tactical squads across battlefields where exposed infantry would suffer unacceptable casualties, their armored hulls proof against small arms fire and shrapnel, while their speed allows rapid redeployment as situations develop. The chapter maintains large numbers of rhinos, understanding that mechanized warfare provides significant advantages when facing enemies who lack equivalent mobility or anti-armor capabilities. Company commanders regularly drill their squads in mounted operations, practicing the rapid embarkation and disembarkation procedures that allow Space Marines to transition seamlessly between mounted movement and dismounted combat. Razorback variants of the Rhino chassis provide additional firepower while maintaining transport capacity, mounting turret weapons that range from twin-linked heavy bolters to las cannons depending on the specific tactical requirements of an operation. The Silver Skulls employ Razorbacks when situations call for mobile fire support, using these vehicles to provide covering fire as squads advance or to eliminate specific threats identified through prognostication. A company might deploy with several Razorbacks configured with different weapon systems, allowing commanders to task-organize their forces based on the specific challenges they expect to face. Land Raiders represent the chapter's most powerful armored assets, massive tanks that combine devastating firepower with the ability to transport squads directly into the heaviest fighting. The standard Land Raider pattern mounts twin-linked lascannons and a hull-mounted heavy bolter, providing anti-armor punch and anti-infantry capability in a single platform. The Land Raider Crusader variant trades the lascannons for Hurricane Bolter, arrays that can shred infantry formations, while the Land Raider Redeemer mounts Flamestorm cannons that excel at clearing fortifications and burning out entrenched enemies. The chapter's first company makes particular use of Land Raiders, as these vehicles are among the few that can transport Terminators and their massive tactical dreadnought armor. The integration of divination into tactical planning manifests in numerous specific ways during actual operations. A company commander might receive guidance from his attached prognosticator, indicating that a particular route of advance will prove optimal, even if conventional military analysis suggests a different approach would be superior. The commander trusts in this guidance based on the prognosticator's track record and the chapter's accumulated experience with divination-guided operations. The advance proceeds along the recommended route, and the company discovers that enemy forces have concentrated their defenses along the approaches that seemed more obvious, leaving the prognosticator identified route relatively lightly defended. Pre-battle rituals serve both spiritual and practical purposes within the chapter's combat preparations. Before significant engagements, the chaplains lead the assembled battle brothers in prayers and litanies that reinforce their faith and dedication, while the prognosticators perform final divinations to confirm that the planned approach remains optimal. These rituals take place in whatever space is available, whether aboard ship before a planetary assault or in hastily secured positions after initial landings. The Battle Brothers participate with genuine reverence, understanding that these observances connect them to millennia of chapter tradition and invoke the Emperor's protection for the coming fight. The Silver Skulls have developed specific tactical approaches that leverage their prognosticators' abilities to identify enemy weak points before conventional reconnaissance might reveal them. A typical example involves the assault on a fortified position, where the prognosticators have identified a specific section of the defenses as vulnerable. Rather than conducting a broad front attack or attempting to breach the strongest points through sheer force, the chapter concentrates its efforts on the identified weak point, committing the forces necessary to exploit that vulnerability while using other elements to fix enemy forces in position and prevent reinforcement of the threatened sector. These coordinated strikes require precise timing and excellent communication between different elements of the attacking force. The prognosticators provide not only information about where to strike, but also guidance on when the attack should commence, identifying windows of opportunity when enemy forces are most vulnerable or when conditions favor the assault. A night attack might be recommended because the visions suggest enemy vigilance will be reduced during specific hours, or a dawn assault might be optimal because atmospheric conditions will provide cover for the advancing Space Marines while limiting enemy observation capabilities. The chapter's tactical flexibility extends to their willingness to adjust plans based on new information or changing circumstances, including additional divinations performed during operations. A prognosticator accompanying a company into battle might receive impressions during the fighting that suggest modifications to the original plan, warnings of enemy reinforcements approaching from unexpected directions or indications that a particular objective has become more or less important than initially assessed. Company commanders learn to balance adherence to the overall plan against the need to adapt to these new insights, making judgment calls about when to modify their approach and when to maintain the original course of action. The employment of heavy armor and mechanized forces allows the Silver Skulls to exploit the intelligence provided by their prognosticators with speed and force. When divinations identify an enemy weak point or predict an optimal moment for attack, the chapter can rapidly concentrate forces at the critical location using their rhinos and razorbacks to transport squads while land raiders spearhead the assault. This combination of foreknowledge and mobility creates situations where the Silver Skulls achieve overwhelming local superiority at decisive points, crushing enemy resistance before opposing commanders can react effectively to the threat. Devastator squads receive particular attention in the Silver Skulls' tactical planning, as the prognosticators often identify specific targets whose destruction will prove crucial to the battle's outcome. A vision might show a particular building or terrain feature surrounded by significance, prompting the assignment of Devastator squads to ensure that location receives concentrated fire at the appropriate moment. The heavy weapons specialists train extensively in target identification and priority assignment, learning to recognize the types of targets their prognosticators typically identify as significant and understanding how to engage those targets most effectively with the weapons at their disposal. The chapter's doctrine emphasizes the importance of reserves and the maintenance of forces held back from initial commitments to respond to developing situations. This approach aligns naturally with the prognosticator's guidance, as visions often suggest that certain forces will be needed at specific times or locations that cannot be predicted through conventional analysis. A company commander might hold an entire tactical squad in reserve based solely on a prognosticator's impression that they will be needed, trusting that the situation will develop in ways that justify this allocation, even if the reasoning is not immediately clear. Close combat receives less emphasis in Silver Skull's doctrine than in some other chapters, though the Battle Brothers train extensively in hand-to-hand fighting and maintain full proficiency with chainswords, combat knives, and other melee weapons. The chapter's preference for methodical, planned operations means that situations devolving into chaotic close combat are generally viewed as failures of planning rather than opportunities for glory. Assault squads exist to exploit specific opportunities or respond to threats requiring rapid intervention, but they operate under tight control rather than being unleashed to seek out close combat engagements indiscriminately. The coordination between different squad types during Silver Skull's operations reflects years of training and the influence of Codex tactical principles. Devastator squads provide covering fire as tactical squads advance, suppressing enemy positions and eliminating threats that might otherwise inflict casualties on the advancing infantry. Assault squads maneuver to threaten enemy flanks or rear areas, forcing opposing forces to divert attention and resources away from the main axis of advance. The entire operation proceeds according to carefully coordinated timing, with each element executing its assigned role at precisely the right moment to create maximum effect. Vehicle crews receive the same intensive training as the Battle Brothers they transport and support, learning to operate their rhinos, razorbacks, and land raiders with skill that comes only from constant practice. The crews understand that their role extends beyond simple transportation, that they must position their vehicles to provide optimal fire support while maintaining the ability to extract squads rapidly if situations deteriorate. The relationship between vehicle crews and the squads they support develops over extended periods of service together, building the mutual trust and understanding necessary for effective mounted operations. The Silver Skull's approach to urban warfare demonstrates their tactical flexibility and willingness to adapt Codex principles to specific circumstances. Cities present unique challenges, with limited sight lines, numerous potential ambush positions, and civilian populations that must be considered during operations. The prognosticators perform specialized divinations before urban operations, attempting to identify which buildings or districts hold particular significance and where enemy forces are likely to be concentrated. This guidance allows the chapter to focus their efforts on key objectives rather than becoming bogged down in building fighting that could consume weeks or months. Naval operations and boarding actions represent another area where the Silver Skull's combination of prognostication and codex tactics proves effective. Space combat introduces variables that make conventional planning difficult, with engagement ranges measured in thousands of kilometers and battles unfolding over hours or days. The Prognosticators attempt to divine optimal approach vectors and timing for boarding actions, identifying which enemy vessels should be prioritized and where breaching teams are most likely to achieve their objectives. The First Company veterans, equipped with tactical dreadnought armor, excel in these operations, their Terminator suits providing protection against the hazardous environments encountered during ship-to-ship fighting. The chapter maintains detailed after-action review procedures following every significant engagement, examining what occurred and comparing actual outcomes against the Prognosticators' predictions. These reviews serve multiple purposes, identifying areas where tactical execution could be improved while also providing data that helps refine divination interpretive techniques. When prognostications prove accurate, the reviews document what factors contributed to successful predictions. When visions fail to match reality, the analysis attempts to determine whether the fault lay in the divination itself, the interpretation of the results, or simply the inherent uncertainty of attempting to predict complex military operations. Training exercises conducted on Varsavia and during transit between war zones emphasize the integration of prognostic guidance into tactical decision-making. Company commanders and squad sergeants practice scenarios where they must incorporate visions and omens into their planning, learning to balance mystical guidance against practical military considerations. These exercises sometimes involve artificially ambiguous or contradictory divinations, forcing officers to make judgment calls about how to proceed when the prognosticator's counsel is unclear or seems to conflict with obvious tactical approaches. The Silver Skull's reputation for appearing at crucial moments, striking at exactly the right time and place, derives directly from their prognosticators' abilities combined with their tactical proficiency. Other Imperial forces operating in the Ultima Segmentum have learned that when the Silver Skulls commit to an operation, they do so with comprehensive understanding of the situation and clear plans for achieving their objectives. This reputation creates psychological effects that work in the chapter's favor, with enemies sometimes withdrawing or surrendering when they learn that Silver Skull's forces are deploying against them, understanding that the Space Marines would not commit unless their prognosticators had foreseen victory. The Silver Skulls present a striking appearance on the battlefield, their power armor finished in burnished silver that catches light with an almost liquid quality. This distinctive coloration sets them apart from the vast majority of Space Marine chapters, most of which favor darker, more subdued color schemes. The silver finish is not merely aesthetic, but carries deep symbolic significance rooted in both practical considerations and the cultural traditions of Varsavia. The silver ore that runs through the mountains of their home world provided the original inspiration for the chapter's name and colors, creating a direct visual link between the Battle Brothers and the world that produces their recruits. The application of the silver finish to power armor requires specialized techniques maintained by the chapter's Tech Marines and their supporting artificer staff. The process involves multiple layers of metallic compounds applied over the standard ceramite plating, creating a surface that resists both battle damage and environmental degradation while maintaining its distinctive appearance. The silver must be durable enough to withstand the rigors of combat across every environment the chapter might encounter, from the vacuum of space to corrosive atmospheres on death worlds. The Tech Marines have refined their methods over millennia, developing formulations that balance appearance with practical protective qualities. Blue detailing provides contrast against the silver base color, appearing on various armor components depending on the individual Battle Brothers' role and company assignment. Shoulder pad trim, knee plates, and certain armor segments receive blue coloration that ranges from deep navy to brighter azure depending on specific designations. The blue represents the skies of Varsavia as seen from the high mountain peaks, where the chapter's fortress monastery stands, those thin atmospheres where the sky takes on shades that differ from the skies of lower elevations. The color also carries associations with foresight and clarity of vision in Varsavian mystical traditions, concepts that align naturally with the chapter's emphasis on prognostication. The combination of silver and blue creates visual effects that serve practical purposes during operations. The silver armor can blend surprisingly well in certain environments despite its brightness, particularly in urban settings where metal and stone predominate, or in the harsh light conditions of void combat where conventional camouflage becomes meaningless. The blue detailing helps battle brothers identify each other quickly in the chaos of combat, the distinctive color combinations allowing for instant recognition of squad mates and company affiliations even at distance or in poor visibility conditions. The chapter icon itself consists of a stylized human skull rendered in white or silver against darker backgrounds, typically displayed on the left shoulder pad of every battle brother's armor. The skull faces forward, its empty eye socket seeming to stare directly at the observer with an intensity that many find unsettling. The iconography draws from multiple symbolic traditions, each layer of meaning reinforcing the others to create an emblem that encapsulates essential aspects of the chapter's identity and philosophy. The skull serves as a reminder of mortality, that even superhuman space marines are not immortal, and that death awaits all servants of the Imperium eventually. This memento mori aspect of the skull iconography connects to the chapter's approach to warfare and their relationship with prognostication. The Battle Brothers understand that their prognosticators' visions show possible futures, not certainties, and that death can come despite all precautions and preparations. The skull reminds them to fight with full commitment in each engagement, understanding that it might be their last. The chaplains incorporate this symbolism into their teachings, using the chapter icon to illustrate points about duty, sacrifice, and the acceptance of mortality that all warriors must achieve to function effectively in combat. The skull also represents honor paid to the Emperor, whose skeletal form has sat upon the Golden Throne for 10,000 years, sustained by technologies that preserve his existence while his body withers. The silver skulls view their icon as a constant reminder of the Emperor's sacrifice, his acceptance of a living death to preserve humanity. This connection to the Master of Mankind reinforces the chapter's loyalty and dedication, providing a visual representation of the ultimate example of duty that all Imperial servants should strive to emulate. The Battle Brothers see their own potential deaths as minor echoes of the Emperor's greater sacrifice. The connection to Robute Guilliman's teachings, assuming the chapter's claimed Ultramarines lineage is accurate, adds another layer of significance to the skull imagery. Guilliman emphasized in the Codex Astartes that Space Marines must understand their role as weapons in the Emperor's hands, tools to be expended when necessary to achieve strategic objectives. The skull represents this acceptance of expendability, the understanding that individual lives matter less than the successful completion of missions and the defense of the Imperium. The chapter's prognosticators sometimes receive visions showing specific battle brothers surrounded by skull imagery, interpretations suggesting those individuals may fall in upcoming operations, knowledge that is shared with the affected warriors so they can prepare themselves mentally and spiritually. Company markings follow standard Codex patterns, with modifications that reflect the silver skull's specific traditions. The right shoulder pad displays company designation through a combination of color and numerical marking. The first company veterans display white company markings on their shoulder pads, though many also incorporate additional personal heraldry earned through centuries of service. Battle companies use variations of the chapter's blue in their company markings, with slight shade differences distinguishing the 2nd through 5th companies from each other. Reserve companies employ different colors according to their specializations, with the Tactical Reserve companies using red trim, the Assault Reserve using yellow, and the Devastator Reserve using green. Squad designations appear as numerical markings on the right knee pad, using Gothic numerals that range from I through X depending on the specific squad within a company. These markings allow for quick identification of individual squads during operations, particularly important when multiple squads from the same company are operating in proximity. The squad number appears in the company's designated color, creating a visual link between the shoulder pad company marking and the knee pad squad designation. Veteran sergeants sometimes add additional markings to their squad numbers, small symbols or decorations that reference specific campaigns or achievements their squads have accomplished. Specialty markings identify battle brothers who have received training in specific weapon systems or roles. Heavy weapon specialists display a stylized heavy bolter icon on their armor, typically on the left knee pad opposite the squad number. Assault troops might add jump pack symbols or cross chainswords to indicate their specialization. These markings serve practical purposes during combat, allowing commanders to identify at a glance which battle brothers possess specific capabilities that might be needed for particular situations. The markings also serve as sources of pride, visible recognition of the additional training and responsibility that come with specialist roles. Honor badges and campaign markings accumulate on a battle brother's armor over years and decades of service, creating visual records of individual achievement and participation in significant operations. These decorations take various forms, from small skull emblems indicating confirmed kills of enemy champions to specialized badges commemorating participation in notable campaigns. The chapter maintains strict standards for what achievements warrant honor badges, ensuring that these decorations retain genuine significance rather than becoming mere ornamental clutter. A battle brother who has served for a century might display a dozen honor badges, each one representing a specific accomplishment that met the chapter's rigorous criteria. Purity seals represent another common form of decoration on Silver Skull's armor, wax-sealed scrolls bearing prayers, oaths, or quotations from sacred texts. These seals serve both spiritual and practical purposes, the prayers providing protection against corruption, while the physical seals can indicate specific vows or commitments the battle brother has undertaken. A warrior preparing for a particularly dangerous mission might receive purity seals from a chaplain, the prayers inscribed on the scrolls chosen specifically for the challenges ahead. The accumulation of purity seals over time creates a visible record of a battle brother's spiritual dedication and the blessings he has received from the chapter's spiritual leaders. Battle brothers who have served with distinction in the presence of the chapter's prognosticators sometimes receive special recognition in the form of divination marks, small symbols incorporated into their armor decoration that reference specific accurate predictions or visions. These marks might take the form of stylized eyes representing foresight, or tarot card symbols relevant to visions that proved particularly significant. The prognosticators themselves display extensive divination-related iconography on their armor, their psychic hoods often decorated with symbols from the Emperor's tarot and Varsavian mystical traditions. The chapter's battle standards represent some of its most sacred relics, banners that have been carried into combat for centuries or millennia and bear the scars of countless engagements. Each company maintains its own standard, a large banner displaying the company number, the chapter icon, and often additional imagery commemorating the company's most significant victories. The company ancient who bears the standard into battle holds a position of tremendous honor and responsibility, understanding that the banner serves as a rallying point for the entire formation, and that its loss would represent a devastating blow to company morale and pride. The chapter's sacred relics extend beyond battle standards to include numerous artifacts maintained by the Reclusiam under the care of the chaplains. These items range from fragments of armor allegedly worn by Robute Guilliman himself to weapons carried by legendary chapter heroes from millennia past. The provenance of some relics remains uncertain, their origins lost to time or obscured by incomplete records, but the chapter venerates them regardless based on their symbolic significance and the faith they inspire in battle brothers who view them. The most important relics are displayed in the Fortress Monastery's Reclusiam, where they can be seen by all members of the chapter during ceremonies and observances. Ancient weapons maintained by the chapter include power swords that have drawn enemy blood for thousands of years, their energy fields still functioning perfectly due to the careful ministrations of the Tech Marines. Some of these weapons bear names earned through the deeds of those who wielded them, titles that reference specific battles or enemies defeated. A power sword might be known as Orc's Bane after its use in a campaign against greenskin invaders, or Traitor's End if it struck down a notable Chaos champion. These named weapons are assigned to worthy battle brothers based on recommendations from company commanders and approval from the chapter master, the assignment itself representing recognition of the recipient's skill and dedication. The chapter maintains extensive records documenting the history of each relic and significant piece of equipment, creating archives that span millennia and fill entire chambers within the fortress monastery. These records serve practical purposes, tracking which battle brothers have carried specific weapons or worn particular pieces of armor, but they also function as historical documents that preserve the chapter's collective memory. A battle brother selected to carry a relic weapon learns not only how to maintain and employ it effectively, but also studies the history of previous bearers, understanding the legacy he inherits along with the physical artifact. Terminator armor worn by the First Company veterans displays particularly elaborate decoration, the ancient suits having accumulated centuries or millennia of battle honors and personal modifications. Each suit of tactical dreadnought armor represents a significant investment of resources and craftsmanship, these rare and precious artifacts maintained with obsessive care by the Tech Marines. The veterans who earn the right to wear Terminator armor add their own marks and decorations to suits that already bear the heraldry of previous wearers, creating layers of history visible on every surface. Some Terminator suits have been in continuous use since the chapter's founding, their machine spirits ancient and temperamental, requiring specific rituals and observances to function optimally. The chapter's vehicle fleet displays heraldry consistent with the infantry forces, the silver and blue color scheme applied to rhinos, razorbacks, land raiders, and other armored vehicles. Each vehicle bears the chapter icon prominently on its hull, typically on the front glacis plate, where it can be seen clearly by both allies and enemies. Company and squad markings appear on vehicle hulls using the same color coding system employed for infantry armor, allowing observers to identify which formation a particular vehicle supports. Vehicle commanders sometimes add kill markings to their vehicles' hulls, small symbols indicating enemy vehicles destroyed or significant objectives achieved, creating visual records of the vehicle's service history. The land raiders operated by the First Company receive particularly elaborate decoration, their ancient hulls bearing heraldry that references centuries of service and countless battles. These venerable vehicles are named, their titles inscribed on hull plates in elaborate Gothic script. Names like Varsavia's Wrath or Silver Vengeance reflect the chapter's identity and values while honoring the vehicle's combat records. The crews that maintain and operate these land raiders develop deep connections with their vehicles, learning the quirks and preferences of machine spirits that have witnessed millennia of warfare. Dreadnoughts represent perhaps the most honored relics the chapter maintains, the armored sarcophagi containing the remains of fallen heroes too valuable to allow to pass into death. These ancient warriors, their broken bodies entombed within walking war machines, display heraldry that combines their personal achievements with chapter iconography. A dreadnought's armor plates might show the company markings the warrior wore in life, alongside honor badges earned across centuries of service before his internment. The chapter maintains several dreadnoughts, each one awakened only for the most significant battles, their ancient occupants roused from sleep to lend their wisdom and combat prowess to critical operations. The Prognosticators' personal heraldry incorporates extensive symbolism related to their divinatory practices, their armor decorated with imagery from the Emperor's Tarot and Varsavian mystical traditions. Eyes appear frequently in Prognosticator heraldry, representing insight and foresight, the ability to see beyond the obvious into deeper truths. Tarot symbols relevant to individual prognosticators' specializations or significant visions they have experienced might be incorporated into shoulder pad designs or chest plate decoration. The Chief Prognosticator's armor displays particularly elaborate divination-related iconography, marking his position as the senior-most practitioner of the chapter's unique arts. The chaplains maintain their traditional black armor, a sharp contrast to the silver worn by other battle brothers that makes them instantly identifiable on the battlefield. The chaplain's armor incorporates silver skull imagery extensively, their helms fashioned as stylized skulls that reference both their spiritual role and the chapter's iconography. The rosarius each chaplain wears generates protective force fields while serving as a symbol of their office, the ornate devices displaying the chapter icon prominently. The chaplain's Crozius Arcanum, their power weapons shaped as stylized maces or staffs, bear extensive decoration including purity seals, oath papers, and inscribed prayers. Apothecaries wear white armor with silver trim, their coloration identifying them as medical specialists while maintaining visual connection to the chapter's overall scheme. The Narthecium each apothecary carries displays the chapter icon, the medical equipment housed in cases decorated with silver skulls that remind observers of the apothecary's dual role as healers and gene seed harvesters. The reductor drill used to extract progenitor glands from fallen battle brothers bears particular reverence, this tool representing the means by which the chapter's genetic legacy is preserved and passed to future generations. Tech Marines display the red armor of the Adeptus Mechanicus with silver and blue chapter markings, their appearance reflecting their dual allegiance to both the chapter and Mars. The servo arms and other mechanical augmentations Tech Marines incorporate into their wargear bear the chapter icon alongside Mechanicus symbols, creating visual representations of the balance these specialists maintain between two distinct cultures and traditions. The Tech Marines' armor often displays extensive modification and customization, their technical expertise allowing them to enhance and personalize their wargear beyond what standard battle brothers could achieve. The Silver Skulls have prosecuted countless campaigns across the Ultima Segmentum and beyond during their millennia of service to the Imperium. Their operational history demonstrates a consistent pattern of responding to threats with precision timing and comprehensive preparation, their prognosticators identifying dangers before they fully manifest and guiding strike forces to optimal deployment positions. The chapter's combat record shows particular effectiveness against enemies whose invasion vectors and strategic intentions can be divined through psychic means, allowing the Silver Skulls to position forces for maximum impact before hostile forces fully commit to their attacks. The Tyranid threat has occupied significant portions of the chapter's attention in recent centuries, as various hive fleet tendrils have probed into the Ultima Segmentum seeking biomass to consume. The Silver Skull's prognosticators have proven invaluable in predicting where these Xenos swarms will emerge from the intergalactic void, their divinations providing warnings that allow Imperial forces to prepare defenses before the full horror of a Tyranid invasion descends upon a world. The Emperor's tarot readings conducted before Tyranid incursions often show similar patterns, the Tower card appearing repeatedly to indicate the sudden catastrophic change that accompanies the arrival of these biohorrors, while the Void card suggests the emptiness these creatures leave in their wake after stripping worlds of all organic matter. One documented engagement against Tyranid forces involved the defense of an agri-world designated in Imperial records as Gospora VII, a planet whose vast grain production fed populations across multiple systems. The chapter's chief prognosticator received visions showing the world's fertile plains transformed into barren wastelands, the crops consumed, and the soil itself stripped of nutrients by ravenous alien organisms. These visions came months before any conventional detection systems identified the approaching hive fleet splinter, providing time for the Silver Skulls to deploy 2 full battle companies to Gospora VII and coordinate with the local planetary defense forces to establish defensive positions. The prognosticators performed extensive divinations to identify where the initial Tyranid landing sites would manifest, casting the Emperor's tarot repeatedly, and employing Varsavian augury techniques to narrow down the probable invasion vectors. The readings indicated that the Xenos would make planetfall in 3 primary locations, targeting population centers where biomass concentrations would provide optimal feeding opportunities for the Hive fleet's collection organisms. The Silver Skulls positioned their forces to intercept these landings, establishing kill zones where their heavy weapons could engage the descending mycetic spores and the creatures they disgorged. The battle unfolded largely as the Prognosticators had foreseen, with Tyrannid spores streaking down through Gospora VII's atmosphere to impact in the predicted zones. The Silver Skulls met the initial waves with concentrated fire from Devastator squads positioned on elevated terrain that provided optimal fields of fire. Last cannons and missile launchers targeted the larger Tyrannid organisms, the Carnifexes and Tyrannid warriors that formed the core of the invasion force, while heavy bolters shredded the smaller Hormagaunts and Termagants that swarmed forward in living tides. The tactical squads held prepared positions, their bolters adding to the wall of fire that met the Xenos' advance. The Prognosticators had warned that the Tyrannids would attempt to overwhelm specific defensive positions through sheer weight of numbers, identifying weak points in the defensive line where the Xenos would concentrate their attacks. The company commanders held reserves positioned to reinforce these threatened sectors, rhinos loaded with tactical squads ready to deploy at speed when the predicted assaults materialized. The battle developed into a grinding attritional fight, the Silver Skulls systematically destroying wave after wave of Tyrannid organisms, while the Xenos adapted their approach in response to Imperial tactics. The coordination between the Silver Skulls and local defense forces demonstrated the chapter's ability to work effectively with conventional Imperial military formations. The Prognosticators provided intelligence to PDF commanders about where Tyrannid attacks would likely focus next, allowing the defenders to shift artillery support and reposition infantry reserves to meet emerging threats. This coordination multiplied the effectiveness of both forces, the Space Marines providing elite shock troops and heavy firepower, while the PDF contributed numerical strength and knowledge of local terrain. The fighting on Gospora VII lasted for 3 weeks before the Tyrannid assault finally broke, the Hive fleet splinter withdrawing after sustaining unsustainable losses without achieving the biomass collection objectives that had drawn it to the world. The Silver Skulls pursued the retreating Xenos organisms, hunting down isolated groups and ensuring that no significant Tyrannid presence remained on the planet to potentially regenerate into a future threat. The chapter's apothecaries worked throughout the campaign to recover gene seed from fallen battle brothers, ensuring that the genetic legacy of those who died defending Gospora VII would continue in future generations. Chaos incursions represent another category of threat where the Silver Skull's prognostication abilities provide significant advantages. The servants of the ruinous powers often announce their presence through psychic disturbances and warp anomalies that the chapter's librarians can detect before the corruption becomes obvious to conventional observation. The Prognosticators perform regular scrying sessions, examining the state of the warp throughout their operational area, looking for the telltale signs that indicate chaos cult activity or the potential emergence of demonic manifestations. These early warnings allow the chapter to respond to heretical threats while they remain manageable rather than waiting until full-scale rebellions or demonic incursions have already begun. A campaign against a chaos cult on a Hive world called Mordian's Gate illustrated the effectiveness of this proactive approach. The chief prognosticator received visions showing the world's underhives consumed by flames that burned with unnatural colors, while the Emperor's tarot readings produced spreads dominated by cards associated with corruption and hidden threats. The chapter dispatched a battle company to investigate, their arrival coinciding with the early stages of a cult uprising that planetary authorities had not yet recognized as a coordinated threat. The Silver Skulls moved through the Underhive warrens with purpose, the attached prognosticator guiding them toward cult strongholds that conventional intelligence gathering would have taken months to identify. The fighting in Mordian's Gate's underhives involved close-quarters combat in environments where the Silver Skull's advantages in firepower and mobility were partially negated by confined spaces and limited sight lines. The Battle Brothers adapted their tactics accordingly, employing flamers and meltaguns to clear rooms and corridors of cultist defenders, while maintaining the disciplined fire control that prevented them from expending ammunition wastefully. The Prognosticator accompanying the company performed divinations at critical junctures, identifying which passages led toward the cult's leadership, and which were defended by forces too strong to assault directly without unacceptable casualties. The campaign culminated in an assault on the cult's primary temple, a corrupted shrine deep in the Underhive, where the cult leaders conducted blasphemous rituals attempting to tear open a warp rift. The Silver Skulls breached the temple using melta charges to blast through reinforced doors, their Terminators from the First Company leading the assault in their tactical dreadnought armor. The fighting inside the temple involved not only the cultists, but also lesser demons that had begun manifesting as the ritual progressed. The chapter's librarians countered the demonic presence with their own psychic abilities, disrupting the warp energies that sustained the entities, while the Terminators systematically eliminated the cult leadership with storm bolter fire and power weapon strikes. Naval warfare represents another operational environment where the Silver Skulls have demonstrated consistent effectiveness. Void combat introduces variables that make conventional tactical planning extremely difficult, with engagement ranges that can span thousands of kilometers and battles that unfold over extended periods as vessels maneuver for optimal firing positions. The chapter's Prognosticators attempt to divine enemy fleet movements and identify vulnerable vessels that can be targeted for boarding actions, providing intelligence that allows Silver Skull's strike cruisers to position themselves advantageously before engagements begin. Boarding actions conducted by the chapter typically involve the First Company veterans, their Terminator armor providing protection against the hazardous environments encountered during ship-to-ship fighting. The boarding teleportarium allows small teams of Terminators to materialize directly aboard enemy vessels, bypassing external defenses to strike at critical systems or command centers. The Prognosticators perform divinations to identify optimal teleport coordinates, locations where the boarding teams will encounter manageable resistance while having access to high-value targets. These operations require split-second timing and absolute precision, as teleportation errors can result in boarding teams materializing inside solid bulkheads or in the vacuum of space. One documented naval engagement involved a Chaos Raider fleet operating along the fringes of the Ultima Segmentum, attacking Imperial shipping and raiding lightly defended worlds. The Silver Skull's Prognosticators tracked the raiders through a combination of conventional intelligence and divination, predicting where the Chaos vessels would strike next and positioning a strike cruiser to intercept. The subsequent Void battle saw the Silver Skull's vessel engaging multiple enemy ships simultaneously, its weapons batteries targeting the Raider fleet's lighter escorts, while Terminator boarding teams teleported aboard the enemy flagship. The fighting aboard the Chaos flagship demonstrated the brutal nature of Void combat, the Terminators advancing through corridors that had been corrupted by centuries of exposure to warp energies. The ship's crew had long since devolved into gibbering mutants and possessed madmen, throwing themselves at the Space Marines in suicidal waves that accomplished nothing beyond briefly slowing the Terminator's advance. The boarding team reached the bridge and eliminated the Chaos commander, a renegade who had turned from the Emperor's light centuries earlier. The destruction of the flagship broke the Raider fleet's cohesion, the surviving vessels scattering as their leadership collapsed. Orc invasions present different challenges than Tyrannid swarms or Chaos incursions, as greenskin warfare follows patterns that combine crude brutality with an almost instinctive understanding of violence. The Silver Skulls have fought numerous campaigns against Orc-Wahs of varying sizes, their Prognosticators working to predict where the greenskins will attack next, and how their primitive but effective war machines will be deployed. The Orc's psychic Gestalt field, the collective unconscious that connects all greenskins and makes their ramshackle technology function, creates interference that can complicate divination attempts. The Prognosticators have learned to recognize the distinctive psychic signature that accompanies orc gatherings, using this knowledge to track Wa movements even when conventional reconnaissance proves difficult. A campaign against an orc invasion force on a mining world called Ferris Prime showed the Silver Skulls adapting their tactics to counter greenskin warfare. The Prognosticators had warned that the orcs would target the world's ore processing facilities, seeking to capture the refined metals for their own crude manufacturing efforts. The chapter positioned forces to defend these facilities while simultaneously conducting raids against orc staging areas, disrupting the greenskins' preparations and forcing them to respond to threats rather than executing their own plans. The Silver Skulls employed their mechanized forces extensively during this campaign, using rhinos and razorbacks to maintain mobility across Ferris Prime's open terrain while avoiding the static defensive positions that would have allowed the orcs to concentrate their forces for overwhelming assaults. The fighting on Ferris Prime lasted for months as the Silver Skulls systematically dismantled the orc invasion force, destroying their crude fortifications and eliminating their leadership through targeted strikes. The Prognosticators identified which orc bosses held the most influence over their mobs, allowing the chapter to prioritize these targets and create chaos within the greenskin command structure. Each successful decapitation strike caused portions of the orc force to fragment as rival bosses fought among themselves for dominance, turning greenskin aggression inward and reducing the pressure on Imperial defensive lines. The chapter's ability to coordinate with other Imperial forces has proven valuable during campaigns requiring resources beyond what a single Space Marine chapter can provide. The Silver Skulls have fought alongside Imperial Guard regiments, Adeptus Mechanicus forces, and other Space Marine chapters in joint operations against threats too large for any single formation to handle alone. These joint operations benefit from the intelligence the Prognosticators provide, their divinations offering insights that help coordinate multi-force efforts and identify how different formations can best support each other. A notable example involved a campaign against a splinter of Hive Fleet Kraken that threatened an entire subsector, requiring the coordination of multiple Imperial Guard regiments, 2 Space Marine chapters including the Silver Skulls, and significant naval assets to contain and destroy. The Silver Skulls Prognosticators worked with the campaign's overall command structure to predict Tyranid movement patterns and identify worlds that would require reinforcement before the Xenos arrived. This intelligence allowed Imperial forces to establish defensive positions on threatened worlds while maintaining mobile reserves that could respond to unexpected developments. The chapter's fortress monastery on Varsavia serves as a coordination center for operations across the surrounding region, its stratagem receiving intelligence from listening posts and monitoring stations scattered throughout nearby systems. The Prognosticators synthesize this conventional intelligence with their divinations, creating comprehensive threat assessments that guide the chapter's strategic decisions. When multiple potential threats emerge simultaneously, the Prognosticators perform comparative divinations to determine which situations require immediate attention and which can be monitored for future response. The Silver Skulls maintain a rotation system that ensures companies remain available for deployment, while others rest and refit after extended campaigns. This approach prevents the chapter from becoming overextended while maintaining sufficient forces to respond to emerging threats. The Prognosticators factor into deployment decisions, their visions sometimes indicating that specific companies or commanders will be particularly effective against certain threats. A company captain who has demonstrated success against orc forces might be selected to lead a campaign against a new greenskin incursion, while a different commander with experience fighting chaos might be assigned to investigate suspected cult activity. The chapter's operational tempo reflects their proactive approach to threat identification, with forces constantly deploying to investigate divination, identified concerns, or respond to conventional requests for aid. This high operational tempo places significant demands on the chapter's logistics and maintenance capabilities, requiring the Tech Marines and their supporting staff to work constantly ensuring that equipment remains functional and that vehicles receive necessary repairs between deployments. The Fortress Monastery's armory contains extensive stocks of ammunition, replacement parts, and other supplies necessary to sustain ongoing operations across multiple theaters simultaneously. The battle honors the chapter has earned span millennia and cover conflicts against every major threat the Imperium faces. Campaign badges commemorating significant victories decorate company standards and appear in the personal heraldry of battle brothers who participated in those operations. The Reclusium maintains detailed records of every campaign, documenting the strategic situation, the tactical approaches employed, and the outcomes achieved. These records serve as training material for future generations, while preserving the chapter's institutional memory of lessons learned through 10,000 years of warfare. The Silver Skull's reputation within the Ultima Segmentum and beyond reflects their consistent effectiveness and the unique advantages their prognostication abilities provide. Imperial commanders who have worked with the chapter understand that when the Silver Skulls commit to an operation, they do so with comprehensive planning and clear understanding of the challenges involved. This reputation creates expectations that the chapter works to maintain through continued excellence in combat operations and careful cultivation of relationships with other Imperial organizations. The Silver Skulls maintain complex relationships with numerous Imperial organizations, their interactions shaped by both practical military considerations and the unique aspects of their prognostication-focused culture. These relationships range from close brotherhood with fellow Ultramarine successors to carefully managed coordination with the Inquisition, each connection serving specific purposes while presenting its own challenges and opportunities. The chapter understands that effective service to the Imperium requires cooperation with other institutions, despite the independence that Space Marine chapters traditionally maintain. The bonds between the Silver Skulls and other chapters claiming Ultramarines' lineage reflect shared genetic heritage and common adherence to the Codex Astartes. The Ultramarines themselves represent the template against which all Codex-compliant chapters are measured, their organizational structure and tactical doctrines serving as the standard that successors strive to maintain. The Silver Skulls participate in periodic gatherings of Ultramarine successors when circumstances permit, these meetings providing opportunities for the sharing of intelligence, coordination of strategic efforts, and reinforcement of the cultural bonds that connect chapters descended from the 13th Legion. These gatherings occur irregularly due to the vast distances separating different chapters and the constant operational demands that prevent extended absences from assigned territories. When they do occur, representatives from dozens of successor chapters might assemble, their combined presence representing a concentration of Space Marine power rarely seen outside of the largest campaigns. The Silver Skulls send delegations to these meetings when their prognosticators divine that attendance will prove beneficial, trusting in visions that suggest specific intelligence will be shared or alliances formed that serve the chapter's long-term interests. The practical benefits of maintaining close ties with other Ultramarine successors manifest in various ways during military operations. Chapters that share common organizational structures and tactical doctrines can coordinate their efforts more effectively than formations using divergent approaches to warfare. When the Silver Skulls deploy alongside other Ultramarine successors, the shared Codex Foundation allows for seamless integration of command structures and mutual understanding of tactical intentions. Company commanders from different chapters can communicate using common terminology and reference shared doctrinal principles, reducing the friction that might otherwise complicate joint operations. The Prognosticators occasionally receive visions indicating that coordination with specific chapters will prove necessary for upcoming campaigns, prompting the Silver Skulls to reach out and propose joint operations before conventional intelligence suggests such cooperation would be valuable. These proactive approaches sometimes surprise other chapters, who find themselves contacted by the Silver Skulls about threats they have not yet identified through their own intelligence gathering. The accuracy of these prognostication-driven recommendations has built the Silver Skull's reputation as a chapter whose counsel should be taken seriously even when their reasoning seems initially unclear. The relationship with the Adeptus Mechanicus represents one of the Silver Skull's most critical institutional connections, as the Mechanicus provides the technological support that keeps the chapter's equipment functioning and supplies the specialized components that cannot be manufactured elsewhere. The Forge worlds that maintain formal supply agreements with the Silver Skulls receive regular visits from the chapter's Techmarines, who coordinate equipment deliveries, arrange for major repairs beyond the chapter's internal capabilities, and maintain the personal relationships that smooth the often difficult interactions between Space Marines and Tech Priests. The Mechanicus operates according to principles and priorities that can seem alien to those outside the priesthood of Mars, their obsession with ancient technology and machine spirits creating a culture fundamentally different from the warrior traditions of Space Marine chapters. The Silver Skull's Techmarines serve as bridges between these cultures, their training on Mars having exposed them to Mechanicus thinking, while their loyalty remains with their chapter. These specialists understand how to frame requests in terms that resonate with Tech Priests, emphasizing the historical significance of equipment being maintained or the potential for recovering ancient technologies during campaigns the chapter plans to undertake. The Forge worlds that supply the Silver Skulls maintain detailed records of every piece of equipment provided to the chapter, tracking serial numbers and manufacturing dates with the obsessive precision characteristic of the Mechanicus. The chapter's land raiders, some of which date back millennia, receive particular attention during maintenance cycles, the Tech Priests treating these ancient vehicles with reverence while performing the rituals necessary to appease their machine spirits. The Techmarines work alongside Forge World specialists during these maintenance sessions, learning specialized techniques and building relationships that prove valuable when the chapter requires rapid resupply or emergency repairs in the field. The supply arrangements cover everything from basic ammunition to sophisticated targeting systems for the chapter's vehicles and aircraft. Bolter rounds are manufactured in vast quantities, the Forge worlds maintaining production lines dedicated to meeting the Silver Skull's requirements alongside those of other chapters they supply. Power armor components, replacement parts for vehicles, and the countless other items necessary to keep a Space Marine chapter combat effective flow through established logistics chains that have been refined over centuries of cooperation. The Mechanicus treats these supply obligations with appropriate seriousness, understanding that failure to meet a Space Marine chapter's needs could have strategic consequences across entire sectors. The relationship extends beyond simple supply arrangements into areas of mutual interest regarding technology and equipment development. The Silver Skulls occasionally recover archaeotech during their campaigns, ancient devices whose origins and functions remain unclear. These items are shared with the Mechanicus for study, the Tech Priests analyzing the artifacts, while the chapter retains rights to any functional equipment that emerges from the research. This arrangement benefits both parties, the Mechanicus gaining access to potentially valuable technological specimens, while the Silver Skulls receive expert analysis and sometimes functional equipment derived from the discoveries. The Forge worlds also provide specialized services that the chapter cannot perform internally, such as the manufacture of new suits of power armor or the construction of vehicles to replace those lost in combat. These projects require months or years to complete, the Tech Priests following ancient patterns and performing elaborate rituals at each stage of construction. The Silver Skulls place orders for new equipment based partly on projected needs, calculated through conventional planning, and partly on prognostication, their librarians sometimes receiving visions, suggesting that specific types of equipment will prove necessary for future campaigns. The Mechanicus accepts these divination-influenced requests without comment, their own traditions including various forms of communion with machine spirits that they view as similarly mysterious to outsiders. The relationship with the Inquisition presents more complex challenges than the straightforward supply arrangements maintained with the Mechanicus. The Inquisition's mandate includes investigating and eliminating threats to the Imperium from within, including the corruption of imperial institutions by chaos, Xeno's influence, or other heresies. Space Marine chapters fall under this purview theoretically, though the practical difficulties of investigating or sanctioning a formation of superhuman warriors means that Inquisitors approach such matters with appropriate caution. The Silver Skull's extensive use of psychic divination and their incorporation of Varsavian mystical traditions into chapter practices creates potential areas of concern for Inquisitors focused on rooting out corruption or unsanctioned psychic activity. The chapter has been subject to inquisitorial scrutiny on multiple occasions across its long history. Investigations prompted by reports of their prognostication practices or questions about the source of intelligence that allowed them to respond to threats before conventional detection systems identified them. These investigations have consistently concluded that the Silver Skulls operate within acceptable parameters, their librarians properly trained and monitored, their gene seed pure, and their loyalty to the Emperor beyond question. The Inquisitors conducting these reviews examine the chapter's practices in detail, observing divination sessions and reviewing records of past prognostications to understand how the process functioned and whether it showed signs of corruption or heretical influence. The Silver Skulls cooperate with these investigations to the extent required while maintaining the independence appropriate to a Space Marine chapter. They provide access to their librarians for interviews and allow Inquisitors to observe training exercises and operational planning sessions where prognostication plays a role. The chapter master and chief prognosticator meet with investigating Inquisitors personally, explaining the historical basis for their practices and the safeguards maintained to prevent corruption. These explanations emphasize the chapter's adherence to proper protocols for psyker training and monitoring, the regular gene seed tithes that demonstrate genetic purity, and the combat record that proves their effectiveness in service to the Imperium. The relationship with individual Inquisitors varies depending on the specific personalities and priorities involved. Some Inquisitors view the Silver Skull's prognostication abilities as valuable assets that should be utilized for the Imperium's benefit, requesting the chapter's assistance with investigations where divination might provide insights conventional methods cannot achieve. Other Inquisitors maintain more skeptical attitudes, viewing any deviation from standard Space Marine practices with suspicion and requiring extensive evidence before accepting that such variations do not indicate deeper problems. The Silver Skulls navigate these different approaches with diplomatic care, understanding that maintaining positive relationships with the Inquisition serves their long-term interests, even when specific interactions prove frustrating. The chapter has provided support for inquisitorial operations on numerous occasions, deploying forces to assist with investigations or purges when requested, and when their prognosticators divine that such cooperation serves the Emperor's will. These joint operations allow the Silver Skulls to demonstrate their loyalty and effectiveness while building relationships with specific Inquisitors who might prove valuable allies in future situations. The combat support provided ranges from small kill teams assigned to assist with specific investigations to company-strength deployments when Inquisitors identify threats requiring more substantial military force to contain or eliminate. The intelligence sharing between the Silver Skulls and various inquisitorial ordos flows in both directions, the chapter providing information gathered through their prognostication and conventional reconnaissance, while receiving access to inquisitorial intelligence networks that span the Imperium. This exchange proves mutually beneficial, the Inquisitors gaining early warning of threats the prognosticators identify, while the Silver Skulls receive information about enemy activities and strategic situations that inform their operational planning. The arrangement requires trust on both sides, the Inquisitors accepting intelligence derived from divination, while the Silver Skulls share information about their capabilities and methods that they might prefer to keep confidential. The coordination with Imperial Guard regiments represents another significant category of inter-institutional relationship, as the Silver Skulls frequently operate alongside conventional military forces during campaigns requiring more troops than a Space Marine chapter can provide alone. The Imperial Guard brings numerical strength and sustained combat power that complements the Space Marines' elite capabilities, the two forces working together to achieve objectives neither could accomplish independently. The Silver Skulls have developed working relationships with numerous Guard regiments across the Ultima Segmentum, their repeated cooperation building mutual respect and understanding of each other's capabilities and limitations. The tactical integration of Space Marine and Guard forces requires careful planning to ensure that each formation operates according to its strengths while supporting the other's efforts. The Silver Skulls typically assume responsibility for the most challenging objectives during joint operations, their enhanced capabilities allowing them to accomplish tasks that would cause unacceptable casualties if assigned to conventional infantry. The Guard formations provide area security, hold defensive positions, and conduct operations requiring sustained presence across broad areas, missions where their numbers provide decisive advantages. The Prognosticators work with Guard commanders to coordinate timing and identify where Space Marine intervention will prove most valuable, their divinations helping optimize the employment of limited Space Marine resources. The cultural differences between Space Marines and regular humans create challenges during these joint operations, despite the shared loyalty to the Imperium. Guard officers sometimes struggle to understand why the Silver Skulls delay attacks while their Prognosticators perform divinations, the concept of waiting for mystical guidance seeming counterintuitive to commanders trained in conventional military doctrine. The Silver Skulls address these concerns through patient explanation and by demonstrating results, showing Guard commanders that the prognostication-guided approaches consistently achieve objectives with lower casualties and greater efficiency than conventional planning would produce. The logistics of supporting joint operations require coordination between the Silver Skulls' internal supply systems and the vast bureaucratic machinery of the Adeptus Munitorum that supplies the Imperial Guard. The chapter maintains liaison officers who work with Munitorum officials to ensure that supply deliveries reach appropriate locations and that the specialized requirements of Space Marine operations receive proper attention. These arrangements sometimes involve the chapter providing equipment or support to Guard formations, such as assigning Tech Marines to repair critical Guard vehicles or deploying apothecaries to treat Guard casualties when their medical facilities become overwhelmed. The Imperial Navy provides transportation and orbital support for Silver Skulls operations, their vessels carrying the chapter's forces between war zones and providing fire support during planetary assaults. The relationship between the chapter and Navy elements assigned to support their operations develops through repeated cooperation, the ship crews learning to work effectively with Space Marine boarding parties and understanding the specialized requirements of deploying Astartes forces. The Navy officers coordinate with the chapter's Prognosticators when planning orbital insertions or void battles, incorporating divination-derived intelligence into their tactical planning alongside conventional reconnaissance data. The Navy's role extends beyond simple transportation to include comprehensive orbital support during ground campaigns. Navy vessels in orbit can provide devastating fire support, their weapons capable of eliminating targets that ground forces cannot effectively engage. The Silver Skulls coordinate these orbital strikes carefully, their prognosticators working to identify targets whose destruction will have maximum strategic impact while minimizing collateral damage to Imperial assets or civilian populations. The Navy gunnery officers execute these fire missions with precision, their training and equipment allowing them to place ordnance within meters of designated coordinates from orbital distances. The chapter maintains permanent liaison staff aboard Navy vessels that regularly support their operations, these specialists serving as points of contact for coordination and ensuring that Navy crews understand Space Marine operational requirements. The liaisons also gather intelligence from Navy sources, accessing sensor data and communications intercepts that provide information about enemy fleet movements and strategic situations across multiple systems. This intelligence feeds into the chapter's overall situational awareness, complementing the Prognosticators' divinations with concrete data about enemy capabilities and dispositions. The relationships with Adeptus Ministorum elements vary depending on the specific circumstances and the personalities of the preachers involved. Some members of the ecclesiarchy view the Silver Skull's divination practices with suspicion, seeing them as potentially heretical deviations from proper imperial faith. Others recognize that the Emperor's Tarot has been used throughout imperial history as a tool for divination, and that the chapter's methods fall within acceptable bounds of sanctioned psychic practice. The Silver Skulls navigate these varying attitudes carefully, emphasizing their loyalty to the Emperor and their adherence to proper protocols for psyker training and monitoring. The chapter occasionally coordinates with Ministorum forces during campaigns where religious elements play significant roles, such as operations to suppress heretical cults or reclaim worlds that have fallen to chaos corruption. The preachers and confessors accompanying these operations sometimes clash with the Silver Skull's pragmatic approach to warfare, the Ministorum representatives favoring public displays of faith and punishment of heretics, while the Space Marines focus on military effectiveness and rapid completion of objectives. These tensions are managed through careful diplomacy, and by demonstrating that the chapter's methods achieve the desired results of eliminating the Emperor's enemies and restoring imperial authority. The Silver Skulls maintain their independence while recognizing that effective service to the Imperium requires cooperation with the vast network of institutions that comprise imperial governance and military power. The chapter's reputation for reliability and effectiveness helps smooth interactions with other organizations, their proven track record encouraging cooperation even when their methods seem unusual to outsiders. The Prognosticators' accurate predictions and the chapter's consistent success in combat operations provide concrete evidence that their approach works, overcoming skepticism about divination-based planning through demonstrated results. The balance between maintaining chapter independence and cooperating with other imperial institutions requires constant attention from the chapter's leadership. The chapter master and his command staff evaluate each request for assistance or proposal for joint operations against the chapter's strategic priorities and the guidance provided by prognosticators. Some requests are accepted immediately when divinations suggest the operations will serve important purposes, while others are declined when the chapter's resources are committed elsewhere, or when visions suggest the proposed actions would not achieve their stated objectives. These decisions sometimes create friction with imperial authorities who expect Space Marines to respond to all requests for aid, but the Silver Skulls maintain their right to determine how their forces are employed while remaining responsive to genuine strategic necessities. The opening of the Great Rift fundamentally altered the strategic situation across the entire Imperium, splitting the galaxy in two and creating unprecedented challenges for every Space Marine chapter. The Silver Skulls, positioned in the Ultima Segmentum, found themselves operating in a region where warp travel became increasingly unpredictable and where demonic incursions occurred with alarming frequency. The Cicatrix Maledictum tore across the galaxy like a wound in reality itself, spewing warp energy and chaos corruption into real space on a scale not seen since the Horus Heresy. The chapter's prognosticators detected the approaching catastrophe through their divinations weeks before the Great Rift actually manifested, their visions showing reality itself tearing apart and the immaterium bleeding through into the material universe. These warnings allowed the Silver Skulls to begin preparations before the full impact of the Rift's opening struck their region of space. Companies deployed across the Ultima Segmentum received orders to consolidate their positions and establish defensive perimeters around critical worlds. The Fortress Monastery on Varsavia went to full alert status, its defenses activated and supplies stockpiled against the possibility of extended isolation if warp travel became completely impossible. The Prognosticators worked continuously during this period, attempting to divine what was coming and how the chapter could best position itself to weather the storm. Their visions showed fragments of possible futures, images of demon hordes spilling from tears in reality and worlds burning under chaos assault, but the sheer magnitude of the approaching catastrophe made clear interpretation difficult. When the Great Rift finally tore open, the psychic shockwave that accompanied its manifestation affected every psyker in the galaxy to varying degrees. The Silver Skull's librarians felt the disturbance acutely, their psychic senses overwhelmed by the tsunami of warp energy that crashed across real space. Several prognosticators fell into comas from the psychic backlash, their minds temporarily unable to process the sensory overload. The chief prognosticator maintained consciousness through sheer force of will and decades of mental discipline training, but even he required days to recover full functionality after the initial shock passed. The chapter's apothecaries worked to stabilize the affected librarians, while the chaplains led prayers and observances intended to strengthen the Battle Brothers' faith during this unprecedented crisis. The immediate aftermath of the Rift's opening saw chaos incursions erupt across multiple worlds in the Silver Skull's operational area. Demonic entities poured through tiers in reality that manifested without warning, their presence corrupting everything they touched and spreading madness among human populations. The chapter responded to these incursions with every available resource, deploying companies to contain the worst outbreaks while maintaining reserves to respond to new threats as they emerged. The fighting during this period tested the chapter to its limits, the constant demands for intervention stretching their forces thin across vast regions of space, where warp travel had become dangerously unpredictable. The prognosticators found their abilities both more necessary and more difficult to employ effectively during this period. The massive warp disturbance created by the Great Rift introduced unprecedented levels of interference into divination attempts, the turbulent warp currents making it difficult to distinguish genuine visions from false impressions created by the chaotic energies saturating the immaterium. The librarians adapted their techniques, developing new interpretive frameworks that accounted for the changed conditions while maintaining the core practices that had served the chapter for millennia. They learned to recognize the distinctive signatures of Rift-related interference and to filter out the psychic noise that threatened to overwhelm more conventional scrying attempts. The return of Robute Guilliman represented a turning point not just for the Imperium as a whole, but specifically for chapters claiming Ultramarines descent. The Primarch's resurrection and his assumption of leadership as Lord Commander of the Imperium provided hope during the darkest period the Imperium had faced since the Horus Heresy. For the Silver Skulls, Guilliman's return carried additional significance given their claimed lineage from the 13th Legion. The chapter received confirmation of their genetic heritage when Guilliman reviewed records of Ultramarine successor chapters, the Primarch's own archives containing documentation that verified the Silver Skull's descent from his legion despite the incomplete nature of official administratum records. The Primarch's Indomitus crusade brought reinforcements to chapters across the Imperium in the form of Primaris Space Marines, new warriors created using enhanced gene seed and improved implantation procedures developed by Archmagos Dominus Belisarius Call. The Silver Skulls received substantial numbers of these reinforcements, Primaris Battle Brothers who brought increased physical capabilities and new equipment patterns that enhanced the chapter's combat effectiveness. The integration of these new warriors into the existing chapter structure presented both opportunities and challenges, as the Primaris brought their own training and traditions from their time in stasis or service with the unnumbered suns, while the chapter needed to incorporate them into established practices, including the prognostication traditions that defined Silver Skull's identity. The initial Primaris reinforcements arrived at Varsavia aboard vessels dispatched by Guilliman's Crusade fleet, their numbers sufficient to replace losses the chapter had sustained during the immediate aftermath of the Great Rift's opening, and to expand several companies back toward full strength. The new Battle Brothers stood taller than their standard Space Marine counterparts, their enhanced physiology granting them advantages in strength and resilience that became immediately apparent during training exercises. They brought with them MK-X power armor and new weapon patterns, including bolt rifles, that offered improved range and penetration compared to standard bolters, equipment that the chapter's Tech Marines studied with great interest. The cultural integration of Primaris Marines into the Silver Skulls proved more complex than the simple addition of new warriors to the roster. The Primaris who had served with the Unnumbered Sons during the Indomitus Crusade brought combat experience and tactical knowledge, but lacked familiarity with the Silver Skull's specific practices and traditions. They understood the basics of Codex warfare and had proven themselves in battle against the Imperium's enemies, but they knew nothing of prognostication or the Varsavian cultural elements that shaped how the chapter approached warfare. The chapter's leadership recognized that successfully incorporating these new Battle Brothers required comprehensive education in chapter practices beyond simple tactical training. The Prognosticators took particular interest in identifying which Primaris showed psychic potential, as the enhanced gene seed and improved implantation procedures seemed to produce psychers at rates comparable to the standard recruitment from Varsavia's population. Several Primaris demonstrated latent abilities that warranted development through Librarius training, these individuals beginning the long process of learning divination techniques and studying the interpretive frameworks the chapter had developed over millennia. The chief prognosticator personally oversaw the initial training of Primaris librarians, ensuring they understood both the theoretical foundations and practical applications of prognostication within Silver Skull's doctrine. The adaptation of prognostication traditions to the Primaris generation required some modification of established practices while maintaining core principles. The Primaris librarians learned to cast the Emperor's Tarot and interpret its spreads, their training following the same fundamental curriculum that standard librarians had studied for thousands of years. They practiced Varsavian augury techniques under the guidance of experienced prognosticators, learning to recognize omens and patterns that might provide insight into future events. The enhanced psychic capabilities that some Primaris librarians displayed allowed them to achieve results that impressed even veteran prognosticators, their scrying sessions producing visions with clarity and detail that suggested the improved gene seed might have enhanced their psychic potential along with their physical attributes. The tactical advantages provided by Primaris capabilities became apparent during operations conducted in the years following their integration into the chapter. The increased range of bolt rifles allowed Primaris intercessor squads to engage enemies at distances where standard tactical squads would struggle to achieve effective hits, their improved armor penetration proving valuable against heavily armored opponents. Primaris Hellblasters brought plasma weapons that could eliminate threats requiring concentrated firepower, their Gravis armor providing protection that allowed them to advance under fire that would force lighter formations to seek cover. The Inceptor squads with their jump packs and assault bolters provided rapid response capabilities that complemented the chapter's existing assault squads while offering different tactical options. The chapter's vehicle pool expanded to include Primaris-specific transports and support vehicles, the repulsor grav tanks providing mobile firepower platforms that could transport Primaris squads while engaging enemies with multiple weapon systems. The Tech Marines studied these new vehicles extensively, learning their maintenance requirements and understanding how to integrate them into existing tactical frameworks alongside the chapter's Rhinos, Razorbacks, and Land Raiders. The combination of traditional and new equipment patterns gave company commanders increased flexibility in force composition, allowing them to task-organize their formations based on specific mission requirements and the guidance provided by prognosticators. The current strategic situation facing the Silver Skulls reflects the broader challenges confronting the Imperium in the era Indomitus. The Great Rift continues to divide the galaxy, creating the Imperium Nihilus on its far side, where worlds struggle in isolation from Terra's light. The Silver Skulls operate primarily in the Imperium Sanctus, the region that maintains more reliable connection to the throne world, but they face constant pressure from Chaos forces exploiting the increased warp instability and Xenos threats that have grown more aggressive in the wake of the Rift's opening. The chapter maintains its traditional responsibilities in the Ultima Segmentum, while responding to the new demands created by the galaxy's division. Chaos incursions from the Cicatrix Maledictum represent the most immediate and dangerous threat category the chapter currently faces. Demonic entities continue to manifest on worlds near the Rift's edges, their presence spreading corruption and madness that can consume entire planetary populations if not contained quickly. The Silver Skulls respond to these incursions with the same methodical approach they apply to all operations. They're prognosticators working to identify where manifestations are likely to occur and to divine the most effective methods for banishing the demonic entities. The fighting against demons requires different tactics than conventional warfare, as these warp-spawned creatures follow no natural laws and can only be permanently eliminated through specific rituals and the application of psychic force. The Librarians play crucial roles during these anti-demon operations, their psychic abilities allowing them to combat entities that conventional weapons struggle to harm effectively. The Prognosticators identify weaknesses in demonic manifestations and divine the true names of greater demons when possible, information that provides significant advantages during exorcism rituals. The chaplains work alongside the Librarians during these operations, their prayers and litanies providing spiritual reinforcement that helps protect battle brothers from the corrupting influence of chaos. The combination of psychic power, faith, and martial prowess allows the Silver Skulls to contain and eliminate demonic threats that might otherwise spread beyond control. Xenos threats in the chapter's operational theater have intensified following the Great Rift's opening, various alien species taking advantage of the Imperium's distraction to expand their own territories or launch raids against Imperial worlds. Orc-Waz continue to erupt periodically, the greenskins drawn to the increased violence and warfare that characterizes the current era. Tyranid hive fleets probe the Ultima Segmentum's borders, their bioships seeking worlds to strip of biomass to fuel their endless hunger. The Tau Empire's expansion efforts bring their forces into occasional conflict with Imperial interests, though the Silver Skulls have limited direct experience fighting these Xenos compared to their extensive history against Orcs and Tyranids. The Prognosticators work continuously to identify emerging threats before they fully manifest, their divinations providing early warning that allows the chapter to position forces optimally. The strategic intelligence derived from prognostication has become even more valuable in the current environment, where conventional communication and reconnaissance face significant challenges due to warp instability. A prognosticator's vision showing a particular world surrounded by Xenos imagery might prompt the deployment of reconnaissance forces to investigate, often discovering invasion preparations that would not have been detected through normal channels until the attack was already underway. The chapter's ongoing role in defending the Imperium requires balancing traditional responsibilities with the new demands created by the galaxy's division. The Silver Skulls maintain their presence in the Ultima Segmentum, protecting worlds that have looked to them for defense for thousands of years, while responding to broader strategic requirements identified by Guilliman's command structure. The chapter participates in coordinated operations alongside other Space Marine chapters and Imperial military forces, their prognosticators providing intelligence that helps optimize multi-force efforts against threats requiring resources beyond what any single chapter can provide. The Fortress Monastery on Varsavia continues to serve as the chapter's headquarters and primary recruitment center, though the increased threat environment has required enhanced defensive measures. The mountain stronghold's defenses have been upgraded with additional weapon batteries and void shields, preparations made against the possibility of direct assault by Chaos or Xenos forces. The recruitment and training of new battle brothers continues according to established patterns, the mountain clans of Varsavia still providing candidates who who possess both the physical attributes and cultural background that make them ideal recruits for a chapter that emphasizes prognostication. The integration of Primaris reinforcements into the recruitment and training pipeline represents an ongoing process as the chapter works to establish procedures for creating Primaris Marines from Varsavian recruits rather than relying solely on reinforcements from the Indomitus Crusade. The Apothecaries and Techmarines coordinate with Mechanicus specialists to implement the enhanced implantation procedures, learning the techniques necessary to create Primaris warriors while maintaining the genetic purity and stability that have characterized Silver Skull's gene seed for millennia. The first Varsavian recruits to undergo Primaris implantation procedures are now completing their training, these warriors combining the enhanced capabilities of Primaris physiology with the cultural foundation provided by their origins in the mountain clans. The chapter's strength currently stands at near full establishment following the Primaris reinforcements, with most companies maintaining close to their authorized numbers despite ongoing combat operations. The first company has been reinforced with Primaris veterans who have proven themselves worthy of Terminator honors, these warriors receiving training in the use of tactical dreadnought armor while learning the specific practices and traditions that distinguish Silver Skull's veterans from those of other chapters. The battle companies have integrated Primaris squads alongside their existing formations, company commanders learning to employ the new capabilities effectively while maintaining the tactical coherence that comes from shared doctrine and training. The future prospects for the Silver Skulls reflect both the challenges facing the Imperium as a whole and the specific advantages their prognostication abilities provide. The chapter's librarians continue to refine their divination techniques, adapting to the changed warp conditions while maintaining the core practices that have served them for 10,000 years. The integration of Primaris Marines has strengthened the chapter's combat capabilities while introducing new tactical options that enhance their effectiveness against the diverse threats they face. The combination of traditional Silver Skulls practices with the enhanced capabilities of Primaris warriors creates a force that maintains its unique identity while evolving to meet current strategic requirements. The Prognosticators' visions regarding the chapter's future show multiple possible paths, the inherent uncertainty of divination making clear predictions impossible even for the most experienced librarians. The visions suggest continued conflict against chaos forces as the Imperium struggles to contain the threats emerging from the Great Rift, battles where the Silver Skull's methodical approach and prognostication-guided tactics will prove valuable. They show Xeno's threats that will require the chapter's intervention, campaigns where their ability to anticipate enemy movements and identify optimal strike points will achieve victories that conventional approaches might not accomplish. The visions also suggest coordination with other Imperial forces on scales rarely seen, multi-chapter operations against threats requiring combined efforts to defeat. The Silver Skulls stand ready to face whatever challenges the era Indomitus brings, their enhanced strength and refined capabilities positioning them to continue their 10,000-year tradition of defending the Imperium through methodical warfare guided by prognostication. The chapter maintains its unique identity while adapting to changed circumstances, proving that traditions can evolve without losing their essential character. The Battle Brothers of the Silver Skulls understand that they serve the Emperor and the Imperium through their particular gifts and methods, their prognosticators providing insights that help guide the chapter toward victories that serve the broader strategic interests of humanity's survival. The fortress monastery on Varsavia stands as it has for millennia, a mountain stronghold from which silver-armored warriors deploy to strike at the Emperor's enemies with precision timing and comprehensive preparation, their skulls and silver heraldry marking them as defenders who see further than most and strike when the moment is right.